We are live. This is Mod Hotep. I'm with Maor Appelbaum, mastering engineer. If you guys have questions for him, go to either Facebook or onto the Google Plus where we made this event. Post the questions there and I'll try to get to them. Some of you, if you want to join the Hangout, you're welcome to join the Hangout. All right, Maor Appelbaum, tell us, bro, what you got going on right now. What have you just mastered? What are you mastering? What's going on with you?
I just mastered a few albums that are actually just came out. It was like very, quick. They came in and came out. I did the new Yes album, Heaven and Earth. I did the new El Nino album, Till Death La Familia. I did the new Starset album, Transmissions, which is going really big on the rock charts. I just finished Eric Gale's album. He's a blues guitar player. There's just a bunch of projects. The new Butcher Babies. A lot of rock, a lot of metal, a lot of alternative rock, a lot of hip-hop, a lot of pop, a lot of country, a lot of singer-songwriter, a lot of different world music, progressive rock, different styles. Just did a band from Mexico called Alpha Lightning Systems. Very prog-ish style, very interesting music. Just keeping busy, bringing new things all the time, and modifying my studio as always. Getting crazy with it.
You said modifying your studio as always. I thought you guys were supposed to sit there in a perfect environment, never change it, and so you always know every little thing.
Oh, I don't change that environment. I'm just adding more gear all the time, or making additional, purchases for other gear to accommodate other styles or other sounds. The actual studio stays the same. Or same speakers, same amp, same room acoustics and treatment. When I say I modify, I just have gear modified to sound in certain ways or bring more gear in. I like having that possibility to experiment with gear and find what fits best to the project, and it also keeps it fresh. Each time you have something in addition you can try. It's like ordering a pizza. Now you have a cheese pizza, tomorrow you have a pepperoni pizza, and then you have a pizza with mushrooms, and it's still pizza, right? But different flavor added to it. So.
Okay, what have you purchased?
Well, I added a few custom pieces that are not normally made. There is a special converter that was custom made. Also, I've added. I like the new Burl stuff. The Burl converters. They're really nice as well. So I added their stuff, and I modified some of the stuff here. I have the. I don't know if it was the last time we talked. Well, it's hard for me to know which one I added since then, but the Burl converters I added, and they were very nice, and the JCF converter, the Latte, which is really nice as well, and which I like a lot. What else I have here? Benchmark converter. It's another nice converter. I added a vintage Geneve compressor as well. And what else? Yeah, and some modifications, opening up the gear, making changes in it, so yeah.
Tell us about the conversion. You said, what are these converters for? Like from what gear to what? What exactly are you?
The first converters I mentioned, they were for the playback and capture. So when I work through analog chain, they take the signal from digital, convert to analog. It goes through the chain I pick, come back to analog, and then converts to digital. And that's the playback and capture. And then also I have converters for monitoring. Like I have the Avocet from Crane Song that has also, it's a monitor controller and has also a converter in it. And I have also the Benchmark which is a D2A converter as well for monitoring. So that's for monitoring, and the others are for actual the actual process of capturing the signal.
All right. Real quick before we get off into this, what's your website?
It's www.maorappelbaum.com. I repeat, www.maorappelbaum.com, Maor Appelbaum.com. My name is pronounced, by the way, Maor, but a lot of people mistake it by Mayor. Yeah.
Yeah, I always say Maor. I'm sorry, bro. Maor.
It's okay. Sometimes
okay.
Sometimes the spelling also gets misspelled accidentally. It's spelled Appel, but sometimes it's spelled accidentally Apple.
Yep, I spelled it wrong one time too. All right, Francisco, you ready? If you're ready, unmute yourself and hit him with a question.
Hey, Maor, how's it going, man?
Good. Good morning.
Okay. Good morning. As you can hear, I'm not all here, but I'm listening, and I really love the setup that you got back there, and love kind of hearing what you're doing with the studio. Now that's a whole different beast there. Like, what was your thought process from going, let's say, from a recording engineer or mixing engineer to a mastering engineer? That's kind of an interesting place to be at this point, especially at where we are today with having all the mastering houses and the big ears kind of doing their thing.
Well, I think there's two important aspects of being a recording engineer. You could be really good at the specs of it, doing the technical work and even the artistic work, but there's another side of it, which is like the psychological side, which is about accommodating your client. And in recording, mixing, and mastering, they're all different. How I accommodate clients is different than how a mixing engineer or a recording engineer will accommodate. Of course, I take their input and I implement that in my work and bring them a product that they're happy with. But a recording engineer has to also create a comfortable area for them to perform and to give their best and feel comfortable, which is a different aspect. And that's why today there's less and less good recording engineers than there used to be, because back then, to become a good recording engineer, you had to go through a lot of training as a runner, as an assistant, and because you would sit in the room and see how the process is made in terms of technical and artistical and psychological, and you would pick up these things. So the process was a longer process, but it was going deeper and deeper, and it wasn't at instant. So that's why a lot of really good producers and engineers used to be assistants for a long time, and kind of learned from their peers, or learned from people they worked for, or just from observation. And I can work with people, I can sit with them and and accommodate them, but some people are more patient, tolerant, and they can make you feel very comfortable, like they're not there, and that's kind of the magic of being a good recording engineer, is being there without them feeling you're there, like letting them feel like they're performing either to themselves or to an audience that they imagine. And I'm not that person. It's a lot about integrity with yourself, and I'm not the person that they would feel that I'm not there, because I listen to things, I analyze them, but I'm better when I have to do the finishing of it. I'm better in being objective and fresh to it and bringing a new perspective to it less than being the guy who's there to capture it with them. I think it's a different type of talent, and it's not an easy thing. I think good recording engineers, like the ones that not only know how to mic well and pick the right preamps and EQs and compressors, but they know how to make the artist bring out their best as recording engineers, not as producers, but actually being there and letting them feel comfortable. That's a talent by itself. And it's a skill that you can practice, but you also got to have it. So you can improve that skill, but you also have to have it from beginning to be the person who can be the person who can actually create that environment. And I don't think I'm that type of person. And I think we all can say, hey, I do this. We can always wave the flag of I'm a recording engineer, I'm a mixing engineer, I'm a master. We can, but we have to be also honest with ourselves where we put our best, where we're willing to go the extra miles to improve what we can do in order to achieve the best results. And it's always kind of a learning. It's a school that never ends.
Yeah, definitely. That's definitely it. Thank you for taking the time to do this, and I really appreciate it. One more question, if you don't mind.
Sure.
What was now you're talking about changing gear or bringing in gear, all depending on the style. Do you mind talking a little bit about that? I mean, that's kind of first for me to hear it, but that's a really cool thinking, and maybe a couple of pointers when it comes to, or ideas of what you would use for certain genres, that this is genre-specific gear.
I believe that every mix and every style of music and every territory will determine the final result. It's not just about how your mix sounds. It's also where it's going to. So if you're doing a certain type of music, even that music has different types of subgenres and territories. If you do French rock, it's probably not going to sound exactly as British rock or Swedish rock. If you do American hip-hop from the East Coast, it's not going to sound the same as the West Coast. And it's not going to sound the same as English hip-hop as well. Okay? Now, so it's not just the style, it's the subgenre of the style and the territory, and it's all dependent on the type of mix you get. So, of course, I can take one EQ and one good compressor and say I'm going to put everything through that, and I'll work it, and I'll get a good result from it. I think I can get a good result, or I can try different gear and see what connects naturally with it instead of imposing it on it. Now, if I don't feel it fits, I'll play with it a bit to see. Maybe it's just maybe I need to find the right settings to make it happen. And if then I feel it doesn't fit, I take it out. Or sometimes I'll just start adding gear and connecting stuff and feeling that, oh, I'm getting to that point where it sounds great, and then I'll pull it off and I'll be like, oh, wow, it actually sounds better without. So it's a lot about experimenting, trying to figure out what fits best, and it's also taste. I might do something that I like, but the client wants differently. So I'll just change it by what they want. So it's a lot about trying to figure out the aesthetics of it, and also hoping that the client likes it. If they don't like it, that's fine. We can work it out and make it to something else. But that's why I have a lot of these pieces of gear, because each EQ sounds different. If you have 4 EQs and you boost 1K in all of them, they're not going to sound the same. It's 1K, but it's 1K with something different in it, either a different cue,
definitely,
different coloration. So that's part of my philosophy. Is it's like friends, you know, and some gear works good with other gear, some gear doesn't work good with other gear, you know. It's like it's a communication thing basically. So one doesn't fit with the other, but one fits with a different one, and that's why I make those decisions, because I feel it needs to feel natural with it. Or if we need to create something that is not natural, but then to find the parts that make the puzzle look as a whole. So I'll have like 9 EQs or 10 EQs and 8 compressors or 10 compressors. I have stuff on this desk. I have under the desk at racks, and I also have external gear as well. So
very cool. Yeah, that's awesome.
by the way, you asked about if there's about genres and all that. The funny thing is, you might have a preconceived idea, and then when you work on it, you're like, oh, you know what? Maybe that will work. It shouldn't work, but it might. But let's try, and then it does. So certain things can be surprising, and it really depends on the mix itself. Some mixes do need more tightness, and some mixes need more kind of like vintage sound, and some need more kind of sloppiness into them to make it sound, more garagey. And some mixes need a lot of sparkle. Some just need size. And I think every piece of gear will supply, one of the things. And everything can be great, and everything can suck. It's just in the right combination. So, did that answer the question?
Oh, very much so. Thank you very much for that, Matt.
You're welcome. Any other question? Okay, I'll ask myself. No, just...
Matt, I don't know where Matt went, but I think Ian had a question.
Yeah. Good morning. Thanks for answering the question. One thing which is related to the previous question, like when just listening to the mix, do you already know which outboard gear you would use, like which EQ would fit, which compressor, or are you just trying all of them?
When I listen to the mix, and I have a picture of a few options I can play with, and I'll try. Sometimes that picture will change, and I'll be like, oh, you know what? Doesn't fit. Okay, let's go the other route. And sometimes I will open more than planned, because like I'll turn on more gear, and because I would feel like maybe I need to experiment a bit more. But in a lot of cases, once I listen to a song, at least I'll have an idea of a few options, and while working on it, then I'll decide if I really need all that or I need something else. And in some cases, you find yourself that what you thought, even the options that you thought, don't fit. You have to start from scratch. So some things you can, just by the experience of working with that piece of gear, then you can assume. And sometimes that assumption is right. But it's not always like that. Like sometimes there's a surprise, and you'll be like, you'll connect a certain compressor, like, wow, this is actually good. I didn't expect, and it works. Same thing with converters, because each converter sounds different, and sometimes I'll pull one converter out and say, let's try this one. And they'll be like, oh, okay, this actually brings me that edge that I needed. So yeah, it's some things you can know up, beforehand just by listening to the mix. But there are things that you just have to try, because even 1 dB can make a change. So you really want to try out which one just fits. But I would say in a lot of cases you start to know what could fit. But it's about experimenting, and then you find out if you're right or wrong. And nothing is bad to be, it's not bad to be wrong. At least you can fix it. So yeah, did that answer that?
Yep, perfectly.
You're from France, right?
Yep, I'm working in the US currently. Actually, I mean.
Oh, okay.
But
I worked with a lot of French bands.
What?
I worked with a lot of French bands.
Okay, cool.
So.
All right, Chris, you had a question for him? I'll read it off for you if you don't. Oh, there you go. You had a question for the whole group, Chris?
Actually, I'm just kind of listening in right now, bro.
I have it says you have a question for everyone, including Maor.
I have a question too?
Well, what I see posted, it says, have you ever found yourself in a situation where you had a client who liked your mastering, but the client's record label wanted to do their own mastering? If yes, what was that like?
Yes. What was like that? Yes, I had that happen. Well, I'll extend that. Some people might like your work and some others might not, and people make decisions based on a lot of things. Some of them are important, some of them are not important. Some decisions are just made because they can be made, with no logic behind it. I've had times where a producer loved my work and one of the band members loved it, but then the other band members who didn't know I was working on it, and they thought the producer was doing it, and they heard that I did it, and even if they liked it or approved it, just because they didn't know, they decided they don't want it. Sometimes people make decisions with no logic behind it, and you think, wait a minute, the producer loved it, one of the band members liked it, you guys heard it, but you decided to go a different way. Same with record labels. I've had times where I worked, and the band, everybody's sending you emails, oh, it's awesome, we love it, happy with it, and then, you're all happy and cool with it, and then the day before, you get this email, well, the record label wanted to go a different route. Yeah, and sometimes if they go to a better one, then, hey, if they choose something that sounds better, you can't argue with that. And of course, if everybody likes it, if they chose a better one and everybody loved it, there's no argument. But in some cases, it's not better. And maybe the band loves it or maybe not. But you have to understand that this type of business, a lot of decisions are made with no logic into them, or with the logic of, this is my friend, I want to push him into it, or we want someone we know, or we just want to do things our way. When they say it's not personal, it is personal, because you were part of it and you were taken out of the equation. So you can't say it's nothing personal. It is personal. It's just how you take it. If they chose their person above you, instead of you, it's personal, because they didn't want to choose you. They chose him. But the only thing you can do is say, well, what should I've done differently, or I couldn't have done it better than what I've done it, or can I learn from this situation? Is there something I can pick up from it? Maybe when the album's out, you go and listen to the master and see if there's something you can pick up from it and say, oh, you know what? I dig now. I get it. What they were looking for, and you can learn from it. And maybe next time, apply those ideas as well. So basically, you might have lost the gig, but as long as you learn from it, you didn't lose the lesson. And I think that's important.
I appreciate it, man. Yeah, I actually, when the album came out, I took one of the tracks that I had mastered and analyzed it to the one that was released, and I found that they had, whoever mastered it really, really pushed it. So when we talk about the loudness wars, it was mastered for the loudness wars, whereas I was trying to keep it, more in line for release on iTunes, so it could get the mastered for iTunes logo on it. So I had the levels down and checked for intersample clipping, and there wasn't any. But on the analyzation of the released version, it was just it was crazy red.
Well, in that case, and this is my assumption, maybe the level differences of yours and them was really big, because even if we mastered for iTunes, let's say you took off 1 dB or 2 dB, okay? It probably is not the small difference. It was probably a huge difference, and they probably, probably their one. I might be wrong, but theirs was probably louder, like 3 dB louder than yours.
It was.
Yeah. That's what I'm assuming, because sometimes people choose louder because the first few seconds are like that. Hello?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I don't know. The computer here did something. You guys see me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So sometimes people choose things based on their first 2 seconds, and they're like, oh wow, this is loud, this is cool, And the thing with loudness, and some people will agree with it and some won't. It's not better, but we have become accustomed to it. And a lot of my discography had a lot of albums that were very dynamic or just not squashed. Some of them, are compressed and full, but they were not squashed. So I have a big chunk of my discography was like that. But I've done a lot of loud albums as well. But the thing with the loudness, it kind of became an aesthetic in a way. And it's not just comparing the levels. People got used to that type of sound where it's not big, it's actually smaller. Okay, it just explodes, and they like it. And that's what catches a lot of those people's ears today, is that it's not big, it's just in your face, and it's very compressed. And they like it. It's clipped, it's distorting, it's smaller but but very edgy, and that's how sometimes people get attracted to a certain sound in mastering. It doesn't mean you have to go that route. If you want to do something dynamic and big with depth, go for it. But just be aware that with record labels, they're different than independent artists, because an independent artist can say, I have my fan base, and my fan base will take what I'm giving them. And with record labels, it's like a business. They have to make sure, if they want. Of course, some don't need that. Some just do what they do, and that's all. But some record labels, they want to be always in a competition. They want to make sure that new CD doesn't sound less loud than the other CD. And it's a situation. I don't agree with it. I think that everything should be mastered to its sound, to its volume. But that's something that happens. And I've done some fairly loud CDs. I gotta be honest with you. I still try to make them sound as best as possible, at best, to give them the punch and size. But yeah, sometimes I'm asked to do stuff that is competitive level, which is not low. It's quite high today. So, but I don't think you lost the gig because you were aiming for mastered for iTunes. You did good by thinking, by doing that and going with that approach. I think they were just looking for something super competitive in terms of level, volume level.
I would agree. I would agree.
Yours might have sounded more dynamic, and maybe they were not looking for that. So it's not that you did something wrong. It's just that maybe they were just looking for something really squashed, which I'm sure you could have given them if you wanted, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But don't look at it as bad, because one is that you were trying to give a good product. There's always an option to talk with the person and say, hey, you know what, you want it squashed? Okay, I'll give it to you squashed. Well, there's not always a discussion or an option for that, but you have the possibility to do that. So maybe talking with the client beforehand can help you achieve that goal later on. I will try sometimes to ask the band, give me some insights, what you're looking for, where is that going to, and so yeah, don't be afraid to ask. Sometimes questions are your biggest tools to use.
Very true. Thank you. Thank you.
You know what? I meant to introduce all the guys here, so let's do it real quick. Andrew, introduce yourself real quick, bro. Driving in the car, whoever's actually behind the wheel. Are you able to talk, Andrew?
Yeah, I'm parked up at the moment. Hi, I'm Andrew Spence from Project 9 Studio in the UK. Currently waiting outside my wife's vocal studio where she's teaching at the minute. So I'm a taxi service today.
And real quick, since you're in the car, you got a question for him before, we have car issues, stuff goes in and out. You have a question for him?
I was just wondering, other than the loudness wars, what are the trends that you've seen change over maybe like the last 2 years in terms of mastering?
I think that in the past years, the wars still exist, but there's more openness to, understanding the good thing and the bad thing of it. And some bands don't try to be part of it, and they do it on a conscious level. They'll tell me, Maor, we're not looking for that level. We just give us a good sounding master, and we're happy. We don't try to compete. And and others are open to learning about it. They're like, we heard about it. We're not really knowledgeable about it. Put some light on the subject, pour some light on it, and some are, open to me giving them a master, and if they want more, we can talk about more level. We can talk about it, and in some cases, I'll give them an example how it will be louder, and then they'll be like, you know what? Let's go to the one before that is less loud. We feel it sounds better. So that's the people who are either anti-loudness wars or open to suggestions or like to be educated about it, or just just want a good sounding master without any need to be competitive with the level. On the other side, because there's so much product being released, because a lot of people can record, then there is a big chunk of work that is actually wanting that sound to be, competitive. And a good mix doesn't mean it could sound good in high level, and a bad mix doesn't mean it can't sound. Some mixes will just not sound good when you crush them, and some mixes just sound great when they're low. And some mixes can sound awesome even if you crush them. So it's not the quality of the mixing engineer. It's certain types of mixes that can work good like that, and some can work less good, and then you have to find your way to make it work good. You know, if I was doing music, which I used to be a musician, I wouldn't care for the loudness wars. I would just care to make it sound great as possible. The best sounding that best sounding master I can. At least that's what I would ask from a mastering engineer to do for me. I wouldn't care for the output level, how loud it is, but that's just my opinion based on how I observe this and see the results. A loud master doesn't translate the same as not a loud master. Not a loud master will have more chances to translate better because it's not pushing hard on the converters and on the amplifiers and on the speakers themselves, and of course on the ear because it's fatiguing. A loud master will probably distort faster on different amps, speakers, and fatigue more, and will be harder to listen to for a long period of time, especially if it's an album. With singles, it's less of that problem because they're one single, so they may be less fatiguing unless the whole playlist is like that. But I do understand that there's an aesthetic that people like, and some people just want to hear that. And then, as a mastering engineer, I'm a service provider. So if that's what they want, I might advise them to go a different route, but in the end of the day, that's what I'll give them, if that's what they want. So I think there is more a combination now of people who can accept less loud masters and those who can, where a few years ago it was just let's hit the red and be there all the time. And years before it wasn't like that, but there was a period in the 2000s, half of the second half of 2000, where it was just about let's make it loud. But I'm not against it. I would just recommend, if it's not needed, don't go that route. But if you really need, it's not going to make you sell more records. But if you really want, we'll do it.
Some people have a hard time believing that some people like that sound when it's squashed, or when it's pushing on your eardrums hard like that. And I've done mixes where I'm sitting there loving how the mix is attacking me, and someone who isn't in that genre, say, will come and tell me it shouldn't be like that. It should have more dynamics. Like if a person who's into classical recordings, classical music, if they were to come and tell me my mixes need to be more dynamic like classical, they have those tastes, and they would even have a snooty attitude about it, like as if the sound that I prefer is beneath them. And it always amazed me, but that's part of why I got into mixing. I like some of the stuff that some people say is horrible, and it's funny to me, like how different we all vary. Because I have a question for you about taste. How much does your taste as a mastering engineer affect how you master?
Well, I would like also to talk about what you said about how people will tell you need more dynamics and all that. People who come from dynamic music, they're sensitive to dynamics. So when they'll listen to any piece of music, they will look for the aesthetics that they like, which would probably be dynamics or certain spread of frequencies. Everybody who grew up on certain music or developed a taste to other music or acquired a taste, we acquire also the sonics. So if that's what got you to mixing, it's because that's what you like. Now, in a few years from now, you might change it and feel like you like something else because you picked up on certain things. It's like coffee is an acquired taste. Babies don't drink coffee. You know what I mean? Kids don't drink coffee unless somebody introduced coffee to them, right? They don't wake up in the morning, where's my coffee? You know what I mean? They don't have that, So it's an acquired taste. Now, you probably also, grew up on certain music, and then you acquired another type of taste to certain music. And I can understand that aesthetic, because that aesthetic is that sonics that brought you to like what you're doing. And some of the masters I would do in the past, some of them like were not crushed, but they had that edgy feel of the rock, like, or edgy feel of industrial, or, you know, we mentioned France. I worked with an industrial band from France called Trepanempal. I've done 3 albums for them. They're very aggressive industrial metal band, and they're very edgy, but they also have a lot of lows, like subs in them, which is not standard in that kind of genre, the same as, you know, in that way they're doing. So it's aesthetics, and you know, they have to understand that, well, they don't have to, it's their decision, but if you're just making your own music, you can make your own sound. If you're a service provider, you can bring your own sound to the table, but it would be also a good idea to maybe be open to what they want in order to accommodate them. You know, unless they're just going for your tone and that's your tone, and they say, this is the guy I need because this is exactly what he does, and I don't need to say anything, and he'll do it. When I work, I put my aesthetics and taste into it, but there's always room for ideas. There's always, I say, you have to leave room for chaos. Okay, let's say a project is 100%. Okay, you gotta leave 20, 30% space for ideas. Like, okay, I did this, but you don't like this. What do you want? What do you want me to do? Oh, okay, I'll change it and do this way. So I'm always open to starting from scratch or altering what I did, because in the end of the day, my aesthetics are my aesthetics. I might know other aesthetics as well and try to work them in the equation. But in the end of the day, your ear wants to hear something. And if it's possible to do so, we'll do. If it's not possible, then we find some kind of compromise. How we bring it to something close to what you feel. So there's always aesthetics into place, just like when you produce a track. You know, how do you produce a track? You know, you listen to the music and then you go by your instincts. What's your instincts? Based on kind of a memory of experience, right? You remember that bass line is what got you into that genre. You remember that effect. It was what got you excited and talking about it all the time. It's like, oh, I love that distortion. So all that is part of your aesthetics. It's your memory of experiences and likes. You also might remember something you don't like, but if you remember that, then you remember that aesthetic. So, you know, let's say a singer comes in and you really don't like how he sounds, but you know that sound. You just personally don't like it, but you know what to do with it because you've heard it before and you have countered that situation. Or at least you know the picture and you're trying something out. So, you know, in every process in audio, it's a combination of trial and error, aesthetics, memory, and all of that. And I think it comes out very easy. Well, not easy, but you can hear it in mastering, because mastering is just the final touch, the envelope, if you want to call it, the overall shape of the tone. So then, you know, small things, even if they're subtle, you can hear how they affect your feeling about the song. Did that answer it?
Yes. Benita, you had another question?
Yeah. Do you have like specific chain for specific mix engineer you used to work with? Like you worked with them a few times before, so you know what compressor you will use, because you know you always like mix this way.
The real answer would be no. I know the type of aesthetics that some mixers go by, but there's almost always a certain surprise. You can work with a producer, do like 20 albums with him, and know what they're giving you, but each time you find yourself going to a different piece of gear or setting differently, based on, if he gave you something with too much low end or too much high end. There are things that could be consistent. Let's say if you work with somebody that has a certain room that has a problem, you might know that up front and know that you're going to have to cut certain frequencies because they have those frequencies, but it doesn't mean that every project you're going to do the same with them. You might cut certain frequencies that they have in their room, but it doesn't mean that you're going to add the same or cut the same on all the songs. So I don't have one chain that fits that producer, one chain that producer. I try to keep it always fresh and bring something new to the table and hope they like it. If they don't, I'll just change it and find what they like. But it's not just one chain that for sure will work. There are cases where I know where it's going to in terms of sound, and just listening to it, and I say, okay, let's do this because I think it will fit. But it's like I don't have a paper with a list of the name of a mixer and how to route it for him. But that being said, like I said, you can notice certain elements that appear in certain rooms or certain mixing aesthetics and know that with this guy, he wants it always lots of lows. This guy wants lots of highs, Then you know what to approach with. Okay, I'm mastering it how I want, but I have to take in consideration what he likes. So, yeah, did that answer? Yeah.
Yes.
Benita, tell us where you're from and tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm from Paris, in France. I'm currently in a master degree in audio engineering in the middle of France, which is Clermont-Ferrand. But I'm doing my internship in Portland, Oregon, in a studio called Interlace with Christopher Crumet, a metal rock producer, and it's really cool.
Okay.
Metal producer?
Yeah, Christopher Crumet.
Can you type the name?
You want me to type?
Yeah, over in the chat. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And Morris he had posted a question of what is the process of your mastering, compression, pumping, EQ, etc. What is the process that you use? But my understanding, every time I talk to you, is there's no set thing. But
yeah, there's no set thing. For example, I changed converters, right? So I wanted to hear how one of the projects that I mastered that was actually approved and the band loved it, I put it through a different set of converters, and wow, even if it was the same settings, it just didn't sound right. Like, totally not right. And I was like, wow, this is interesting. How just changing the converter, and this is something I knew before, but it's always interesting to see how it affects, because when you're working with converters, you make your EQ judgments and compression based on how the converter's working with it. And so I changed and I was like, wow, how much high mids and high end on the guitars. Then I listened to the original. I was like, oh, that converter took off that. So and then I listened to a different converter, and that one added a lot of low end. So I will always have to work based on the music and also the gear itself. In terms of compression, if it's not needed, then there's no need to put it. Now, if it's the tone that the compressor gives you, that's a different case. Like if you don't need the compression, but it gives you a tone, you go for it, because maybe that's the tone you were looking for. Because every piece of gear changes the tone. It doesn't matter if it's a compressor, a EQ, limiter, whatever you want. Just by passing through it, it's going to alter the sound in a certain way, either dynamically or tone-wise, or a combination of both of them. I've had EQs that when you listen, like before and after, the snare changes not only frequency-wise, but it feels different. like it's compressed. So that can happen as well. So it's I can't say there's one go-to settings, but also there are different compressors here, and each one has a different sweet spot, or not only a sweet spot, but if you set it to where it sounds good, and then there's a different place in the song where there's a big development and lots of low end, it's not going to react the same as it did before. So you might have to reset it.
Yeah, your gear, is it automatable?
No, it's everything I have to do by hand.
Okay.
But sometimes I do automation. If I need to apply, I can do automation on the computer to push certain things, like if I need to EQ something different, or if the song has developments that need to be pushed or changed, I can do that also with volume changes, and I can do there is a possibility to automate what's coming out of the computer, either effect bases, like compression and EQ, or just level. But the actual gear itself is not it's not automated. One of my EQs can be has motors in the knobs, and they can move based on settings that I will do. But I don't do that during. I can do that just to put in memory and recall it, but not during the mastering itself, because then you're going to hear the movement of the knobs, and I wouldn't recommend that.
Do you ever add, say, dynamics, like if the chorus isn't exploding, if it's not big, you say actually brighten the mix in that section, or do anything like that? Do you actually do anything like that to some people's mixes?
I've done it, yeah. I've done, there were sometimes mixes that come in that the chorus was not as open and big in terms of level, not tones, but just, didn't explode out in comparison to the verses. And then I would change it. In some cases, it's not good to do so, because sometimes the artist has a certain sound that he wants, and when you change that to him, he feels like, oh, I want it to sound the same. And sometimes they'll give you mixes like that they just sound the same. Even if you change the volume, the chorus is still very compressed, and it's not going to open up. But in case I feel that it's needed, I'll do so. Or if I'll get asked, sometimes I'll bring a master to the client and be like, I love it, it sounds great, can you make the chorus jump out a bit more? And then I'll go to the chorus and I'll listen to it, and I'll be like, okay, maybe if I take, I make some dynamic changes here. But not always it works. Sometimes just that volume change doesn't really help it, because what makes a chorus pop out is the arrangement in the chorus, and how much the feel of the chorus is the chorus. They could be, even if the same level, and you could say, wow, this is a chorus, just because how it sounds, in terms of arrangement and melody. So they can stay even the same level, and you would hear that, and you would know the difference, what is what. Or you would like to make the changes and then accentuate that.
All right, Nikhil. Is it Nikhil? I keep forgetting, bro. I'm sorry.
Nikhil. It's cool, man. Yeah. Just think Nick and Hill. Nikhil.
Thank you, Nikhil. Yeah. Tell us where you're from. Tell us about you, and then hit him with your question.
Yeah. Basically, I'm from India. I just passed out my degree last year. Been doing this stuff for 3-4 years. I want to kind of get into the metal engineering scene, especially. I got a couple of questions actually, regarding what we just spoke. First of all, it's we spoke about kind of disagreements in sound, where say a band would send you something and then say you would push it, or you'd leave it dynamic, but the label wants it more aggressive, and the band wants it more dynamic. What I mean, how do you tackle that at that point? As in, do you try to reach a compromise between those two, or just provide like, okay, I'm gonna give the label what they want, or I'm gonna give the band what they want, something like that.
Okay, let's start by approaching the subject as what we define a disagreement. A disagreement is when two people actually don't agree. It's not about they had an opinion and you had an opinion. Okay? If I've done something and they want something else, that's not a disagreement. That's basically I've showed one side, they showed another one. That's all. We didn't disagree on anything yet. Disagreeing is the actual process of not agreeing to find the solution. Okay, and it's very important to understand that, because a lot of people have a short fuse because they put the wrong thing on that. Like, they'll call it a disagreement, and it's not. Okay, I'm not judging you by saying that. I'm just trying to tell you where things can mess up. Okay, just because you had an idea and they had a different idea, that's fine. Now, talk about it. Okay, now you talk. Okay, and this is something that's very important to know, because when I talk to a label and they or a band and they want something totally different, I can tell them my opinion, and they can say no, but we want this, or I can force my opinion. Okay, now, a place to force your opinion is when you have the high say. Let's say if you're the producer and the band member maybe, and you can say, no, this is what we want. Or if you're the record label. So in the end of the day, somebody has the higher say. Okay? If you're a huge label, you might have the higher say. If you're a huge band, you might have the higher say. You could be a small band and have the higher say as well. Okay? Now, when I get to a situation like that, and I'm not a big politician or diplomat, but throughout the years I learned that you don't have to act the way you don't want people to act to you. Okay? You understand what I'm saying? You don't have to be defensive because you don't like if they're defensive to you, right? So, instead of trying to be defensive, and it's okay to put your shield on, but listen, if they tell you, look, we're looking for this, can you supply that? If you can, and it doesn't feel like you're compromising too much, go for it. If you feel you're compromising too much, but there's no other way to talk it out, do it. If there is a way to talk it out, open a discussion. Sometimes you'd be surprised, but some bands or some labels, they'll understand your input and say, oh, you know what? Okay, let's do it. And some will be very strict. And that's where the discussion comes in. Now, the more experienced you are, you pick up that thing faster and faster. It doesn't mean you know how to handle it better, but you'll pick it up faster. Now, some people have a short fuse. They'll pick it up really fast and be defensive. Some of them don't have a short fuse. They'll pick it up and they'll try to work with you. It's your decision what type of person you are. And just, patience is like a muscle. You got to train it. If you don't stretch, you wouldn't know how much to stretch. And in this line of business, we make the decision how much we're training that muscle. It's not them. Because they think the whole world owes them, right? That's what clients are.
Yeah.
When you go to buy something, you think you deserve everything, right? It's okay. You're allowed to do that. Doesn't mean you get it, but that's what it is. So that's part of the business, is understanding, the record label wants something. Now, and you deliver that. Now, just be aware, there's a lot of big producers or big mastering engineers or big mixers that have a big amount of product they've done that is sounding great. And they have an amount of product that doesn't sound great. And they just have to live with it. So, you know, when you ask him, hey, I saw you did that album, they'll be like, yeah, I had a great time working with them. It was fun and all that. And you know, that's probably something they're very proud of. And there's something else that they'll be like, yeah, you know, I wished I could have done that album 1 dB lower, 2 dB lower. Doesn't mean they're not happy with it. It just means that they felt that they could have done a better job if it wasn't that crushed. So you got to be open to the idea that not everything you do is going to be the best you do. You might have put your best work into it, and then it was changed, not into your best interest. But you're a service provider, you know, and hopefully most of the product you'll put out sounds good in comparison to what you had to work with. So that's how I look at it. Remember, you're a service provider, and you have input. And the funniest thing is, there's a double standard in this industry. People hire you because they trust you, but they don't trust your final word a lot of times. Okay? They hire you because they know you're the guy and they want your input. But when they're asking for what they're asking and you didn't do it originally, you had to do it because they asked. They hired you to do it, not because they trust your word or trust. You understand? It's a double standard.
Yeah.
And the more you're in this industry, the more you see it happen. Okay? So, you know, if they tell you do what you think, okay, I did. Could you add that? Could you add that? Okay. What do you think of it? Well, that's what you asked me to do, right? Yeah. Okay. Do you like it? I like the one before, but I can understand what you want. Okay, but is it good? Hey, I thought that one was good, but you want that, I'll do that. You know what I mean? So it's a double standard. You know, they trust you, but in the end of the day, they trust themselves even if they don't trust themselves. They make the decision. How many people agree with that?
Bro, I have a song right now in my car. This group, iMac ENT, they want the version that's attacking my ears. And I mean, it actually hurts. But this version, I can actually blast it. And I mean, I can surround myself with it and have it really hit me. And I'm not hurting at all. I mean, I'm surrounded and riding, loving it like a little kid. But they want the one that I can't blast because it hurts my ears. And I give them that. And I just took it to them yesterday and said, look, man, here, play this CD. I'm not even going to tell you who it is. Just play the CD. They're dope. It's them. And they played it, and they're like, yeah, we are dope, but we still want the other one. I'm like, all right, you know, it's whatever. You know. Now, you keep saying service provider.
Yeah.
And that's an important thing. Why?
Well, I'll give you an example. You see me now in the picture, right? And I'm talking to you, okay? We have a dialogue. A service provider basically has a certain dialogue, okay? In the end of the day, and even if let's say I'm here, I'm not in the picture right now, right? But I'm still a service provider. So even if I'm not in the picture or I am in the picture, there's always a dialogue. And it doesn't matter if it's internet, if it's phone, if it's text. In the end of the day, the client wants a certain communication with you, and that communication is really to achieve a product. Now, I know I took it kind of a philosophical way, like in the picture, out of the picture. The reason for that is once they put the money in your pocket or on the table, wherever you want it, they expect you to provide something for them, even if you're not in front of them, okay? Even if you're distant with them, they always expect you to do something. When you go to a drive-thru and somebody answers that speaker, how would you like your burger? Okay? I would like with onions, without onions. Let's say you ask with onions. Then you come to that window when they give you the burger, and you open that burger and you eat it, and they're like, there's no onions there. You get pissed off, right? Well, maybe not onions, but you know what I mean? Or you know, there's no cheese or there's no ketchup, you know? Now, why do you get pissed off? Because you paid for something and you didn't get it. Right?
Right, right.
It doesn't matter. I guess this is why I'm saying it's important. It doesn't matter if you're in the picture that they view you, like talk to you on the phone or email. It doesn't matter. They feel like you're there. It won't matter to them if they talk to you on the phone, they email you, they text you, or whatever. There's an expectation. Okay? And that expectation is beyond borders. They expect you to give 150%, even if they paid you for 10%. Once you understand that and willing to do that, then you and willing to put that into action, that's when you become a service provider that gives the clients what they need. Now, I'm not saying that for $10 you got to give them $1,000 worth of work, but there's a place to meet in the middle and say, look, for $10 I can only do this and this, but I'll do it. So that's understanding what a service provider is doing what's needed. And sometimes it's something you don't agree with in terms of aesthetic or style. And then it's your decision either to take it or not. Bands sometimes hire huge mixing guys you would never believe, and they get fired. And you're like, what? This guy's like top ranked, done everything, and what? They didn't like his work? Or they didn't like his, you know, approach to things? And then they go to someone else. And that's part of the whole picture, you know. You could be really good at what you're doing, and people will hire you for that specific thing, but they might fire you because something else. And that could be just because they couldn't reach you. You know, you were too hard to get, you know. That's why I said if I'm there or not there, you got to be there. You know, let's say, you know, they emailed you 20 emails and you didn't respond because you were on a vacation. You think they care for your vacation? They don't care for your vacation. And why should they care for your vacation? They paid you. Would you care for their vacation? The only way to care for their vacation is if you talk with them and say, look, I'm going out for 10 days now. I won't be back till then. So let's schedule for then. In the meantime, you know, you can send me the information. That's the discussion you can do beforehand, and at least, you know, get them to understand where you are and when you're going to work on it. But other than that, you have to understand, a client pays you money, he expects something. When you bought that burger with the onions in it and you didn't get them, you felt, where's my onions? I asked for them. That's how a client is. And they always have their deadlines that they think that they're like, it has to be now, and they're going to listen to it in 2 months from now. It's like, but they asked you to do it now. What are you going to say? Oh, you're going to listen to it 2 months from now? They hired you knowing it's going to be finished next week or tomorrow. So
I got you. Thank you very much. Ben, would you just, I know you already asked the question, would you tell us a little bit about you and where you're at?
He's muted.
You're muted, Ben.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, awesome. Mahat, thanks for having me again. I appreciate it, the invite.
You're welcome.
Yeah, Maor, what's happening? We met at NAMM a couple times.
Yep.
Yeah, how are you, man? Nice.
I'm good. Nice to see you too. NAMM is the place to meet.
Yeah, it was good time. So you wanted me to ask a question? Was that it, Mahat?
Tell us about yourself and where you're at.
I'm in the Bay Area.
Which Bay? What do you mean? We're worldwide, bro.
There's only one Bay. Come on, man. The Bay Area, San Francisco, Oakland, Northern California.
The Yay area, huh? Okay.
Yeah, that's where I was born and raised here. I'm a music producer, but I do a lot of things in the industry. I mix front of house. I'm a musician, arranger, composer, producer, all that good stuff. And sometimes I have to do a little mastering, unfortunately, but I really love to work with good mastering engineers, so it's great to meet you, and hopefully we will work together sometime. Yeah, I had a couple questions, if that's okay. I got two.
Hit him up, bro. Beat him up.
All right. The one question I have is, you know, if you could just talk a little bit about the process. Is your studio in your house, if you don't mind me asking, or do you have a commercial facility?
My facility is, here's the concept, because I do a lot of international work, I have to be able to pop in, go, you know, pop in the studio in the morning early, work. If I need to take a break, I go out, go in, so it's always close to where I am. I think, you know, I think that today the difference between a commercial and a private owned basically the same, because a private owned is a commercial and a commercial is a private owned. You know, we're not talking about huge facilities or studios like, you know, like the big studios in LA or New York, and we're not, you know, today most of the engineers, some of them do go out and freelance and record in facilities and mix, but a lot of engineers today would go and track rooms in one studio. And if you can mute your mic because we're getting feedback.
So, not to interrupt you, just real quick, because my question is very specific, was can you tell us about when you moved into that room, the process of treating it, and you know what it sounded like when you moved in, how you dealt with the low frequencies, the modes in the room, and just that process of how you dialed in that low end, because I'm imagining that it looks like a fairly small room, so I'd imagine that there was some bass cancellation or and certain kinds of problems you had to deal with. Could you let us know how you dealt with that?
Sure.
Thank you.
I'll first of all, if you can just mute your mic because it's feedbacking. Yeah. Okay. So I'll explain. And this actually goes to the commercial and private sector as well. If you go to a big studio, a lot of times where you'll sit, the sweet spot will sound the best, but if you go back, then you start hearing the low end. And it's very common that you sit in the sofa in the back and you're like, and, you know, it will sound like that. And in smaller studios, what's hard to do is to figure out how the sweet spot is the actual area that you're going to be either sitting as a client and as the producer mixer. This room is not big, that's true, but it's big enough to accommodate, you know, the gear. I don't know if you can see. So it has enough space to accommodate, and the ceiling, which you can't see here, is actually really tall. If you see here, see it's really tall, the ceiling, and it goes in an angle, which gives a big benefit over normal rooms. So the room is not super small at all. It's not big at all, but the benefit of having a ceiling like what I showed you right now helps a lot. What I did when I moved to this room, I had a different room that was huge, really big. And when I moved to this room, I played some music here, and I found that there were things that I need to approach differently from the other room that I had before. I found out about a guy in Israel named Jonathan Schaefer, and he was doing his PhD in a certain thing in acoustics. I forgot the specific subject, but I heard a lot about him, and I contacted him, and he was very interested to do this. So I flew him in here, and in 10 days we were, measuring the rooms, the room modes, and measuring everything, and designing it. Prior to him coming here, I had the whole room sketched, measured, videoed. I did videos of the, showed how the room looks, either by still cam shots, this is how the wall, this is how the angle is, and also video. That way he could see how the room is, from every angle, and just I moved with the video and showed him, including the ceiling. Also, how the gear is spread. It's very important because gear takes space, and he built a 3D graphical model of it based on all the specs that I gave him and the pictures. So when he came here, he already knew how to approach it. And I contacted the companies who make acoustic treatments, and I ordered express because I knew we have 10 days to finish the room. And that's what we did. And every day we did measurements of the room, acoustical measurements, and also, measurements, actually, measuring distances between pieces of gear and the desk and the wall, and putting stuff on the wall and measuring again, making sure it's all good. And after 10 days, we were set. So the good thing is also my wife's father is a carpenter, a very talented one. So having somebody who's a professional and knows how to do it will look good as well helped.
So what were some of the problems that you found in the room when you were doing the measurements, and what were some of the ways that you overcame those challenges?
Well, first of all, a room is tuned to be, to take out the problems, but also to fit the taste, because I want to listen to it, to the music, and feel comfortable listening. I wouldn't like it to sound too sterile. I would like to feel it comfortable and still have all the details. Usually problems that can occur in small rooms would be a low end that has a build-up and a cancellation. The build-up would feel nice in the beginning. When you play music, it will start nice, and then it would start to develop and take out the high end. So if you listen, this room was designed to work with every type of music, because for me it's very important that I can work on music that has fast low end, like like that low end that is really fast pace, and have it dissolve fast. Where if you would listen to this room before it was tuned, you could listen to music that had low end but not fast. So you could put Steely Dan, you could put James Taylor, you could put all of those great sounding albums, and it would sound good. But once you would put something that is very fast, like metal or EDM, that has fast bass, then it would start to develop, and you would have to treat that. So finding where the development is and how to concentrate on those frequencies and still have low end develop nice here, that's kind of like the trick to do it. That's the trick, that once you figure that out, then it works. And these speakers go down to 25 hertz, so they can project really low end. The room is very detailed, so once you'll sit here, you can hear a broad spectrum. I think usually the obstacles in these types of rooms are low end. High end can happen as well, but because the way the ceiling is built here, and I guess the way that everything is spread here, high end was less of a problem. In the beginning, I think it was more low end that was obscured, maybe some low mids as well. Today, the high end is very detailed, so you can really hear where it comes from. And the stereo image is so detailed that mono information really sits in the center. And it's a big mono. You can really hear it comes from the wall. Like the front wall will talk, will sound. Very detailed. Did that answer the question?
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. We had a question here. Don asked about handle dithering versus the mix engineering doing it during the bounce. If you work 24-bit, then you don't need to do the dithering. You can give me, and I do the dithering in the final 16-bit if needed. The question if to do or not to do, if your system is a 24-bit system and you're releasing 16-bit out, because that's how you like working, then dither. But if you can keep it 24-bit, send it 24-bit. I would recommend keep the sample rate and the bit depth of the mix as is the session is. So if you're working 44.124, keep it that. If you're working 48.24, keep it that. If you're working 16.44, keep, basically just keep it in what platform you're working with in the session, so it has the same parameters. So you're not upsampling or downsampling. Same thing with the bit rate. Don, did that answer the question? Because you were asking also for MP3. MP3, I just, I'll work to make it sound good as an MP3. So the dithering should, if you want to do the dithering, then you'll probably do it before the MP3 conversion. If you decide to do dithering.
Yeah, he's left. He was here, but he left.
Okay.
And Chris, did we get to you yet?
Yes.
Let's see, who else? Okay, who else has a question for him then?
Yeah, I got another question. This is regarding the aesthetics and stuff we spoke about earlier. Basically, yeah, I mean, do you, and how do you, if you do, stay objective while kind of mastering? Say, for example, you get a mix with a guitar tone that's just like really buzzy and like really bright, for example. And I mean, that's not kind of what you're used to. It's not your favorite tone. You have the urge to change it. Do you actually go ahead and change that, or like leave it as it is because that's the artist's decision? And yeah, how do you stay objective, basically?
Okay. Well, let's think for a second. What do we expect from mastering? Okay, what do I expect from mastering if I was an artist? First of all, I expect a mastering engineer to be objective, to be fresh, to bring a new perspective to the table, and maybe I'm expecting him to fix what I was missing. Maybe not. It's always a dilemma, because I might improve it, and they might not like the improvement. Okay, I will probably try to make it sound better. But if they tell me, oh, you ruined my guitar tone, then I'll say, okay, I'll go back and fix it and go to what they wanted. In a lot of cases, I would improve the guitar tone, or at least enhance it in a certain way. I'll find myself fixing what I could. Sometimes fixing it in a certain way will just ruin it, and you got to figure out if you really need to fix it or it's best kept as is. Or you can ask them to go back to the mix and just, hey, your guitar has a bit too much edge. Maybe you can shave that off, or maybe the guitar has too much low end and it's rumbling and just making it not clear. You have to try to figure out before and make the decision. Either you can communicate with them and they'll change it in the mix or not. Sometimes they say this is the mix as is. It's like no eye to eye, you know. This is as is. It's your job. You deal with it, you know. And that would be like, well, we forgot the onions in your hamburger. You'll have to eat it with it. And then you need to make a decision. Either you're fighting it and say, look, guys, I really think you should do this, or which sometimes helps, by the way. I've done that a few times, and it really made those albums great because they took my suggestion and they went back and fixed, and wow, and they'll be like, it sounds really good now. I'm like, yeah, well, thank you for saying that, you know. But sometimes it's just that they say, well, this is what we gave you. You have to deal with it. It's in some way it's closed-minded, but that's how they figured that they need to do it. Maybe other mastering engineers dealt with it the same way, and they expect you to do so as well. So I try to understand when I'm listening to it. I try to understand the style, the territory, the where it's going to, and see if I can improve it. And if I feel that it's better left as is, improving other things will at least make it fit right, then I'll go that way. It's very tricky. I had an album that the drums were so bad. I explained to the person, you got to go and retrack the drums. And he didn't want it. I said, look, you know, this is the maximum I can do with it. He says, well, can you take a few more takes? I said, look, you know, more work. It's going to cost you more in the end of the day, because instead of just fixing the problem from the source, you're trying to patch it all the time. It's more time. It's not helping you. After so many tries, I said to him, look, you know, I just want to be honest with you. You're not helping yourself. You're degrading the product more and more. Why don't you go and just track drums as they should have been sounding on this album? After a while that he worked with me, and he paid for all these revisions because I explained to him, you can't do this, and he insisted and insisted. And I said, look, you're paying for something you don't need. I mean, I include revisions in my rates, okay, but I told him I can't do anything more, and I wasn't just trying to be lazy. I was telling him the truth, and he agreed to pay me to just push me to do it. In the end, you know, he talked with the producer and said, hey, you know, Maor insists all the time to record the drums again, and I've been paying him, and he's saying, I don't need the money. I mean, I'm okay with you paying me, but I think you should do it by retracking the drums. He retracked the drums. The whole mix just sounded so much better. And he's like, Maor, thank you for telling me that. And I insisted on that. But not every time it's like that. Sometimes they you know, it's a battle, and sometimes you just have to be with it, you know, and say, okay, that's what it is, and I'll work with it. The good thing about experience is that you encounter so many situations that you either find a way to communicate and do it, or you find a way to work with it as is. And as much as experience you'll have, there's always a new adventure. There's always a new challenge, and there's always a new situation you got to deal with. And not everything is positive at that moment, but it's going to be positive later on because you're going to learn from it. So everything adds up to your call it database, knowledge base, and you know, don't assume that because you've done 10 projects that worked right, that the next one is going to work right. That's Murphy's Law of experience. The more experience you have, the more you find out there's new things around, and it's like a code. You got to decipher it. You got to figure out. Sometimes if you talk with the client about it, they'll be defensive. I had a band that came to me, and they were just sitting bad. I told him, guys, you gotta edit it. It sounds bad. I don't mind taking the money from you and working it, but it's not about that. It's about getting the project sounding best, and the editing here is bad. And they couldn't notice it. I was like, wow, they can't notice it. In the end of the day, they were like, okay, Maor, when we'll be ready, we'll come and work with you. And I said, whenever you're ready. If I were, I don't understand how sometimes people don't notice these things, but maybe that's because I'm objective and I'm not connected to the project. I'm not the creator of it. So, put your input. If you feel a problem, say it. And also with the mastering engineer, if you don't like what the mastering engineer did, and tell him. Maybe he said, I would like to go that way. And you say, no, but I thought the other way. Well, it's an open discussion here. It's not one way or the highway, unless that's how it was, mentioned from beforehand, or that's how that person works. So, did that answer the question, or is there anything you want me to elaborate?
Yeah, perfect, man. That was awesome.
Also, I want to say this in general. The reason you hire a mastering engineer is for those reasons. Okay? You can get a good result, okay result, bad result, fine result, so-so result, good plus maybe result also on your own. But if you have the right mastering engineer, or if you have the right perspective on how to approach it with the person who's the mastering engineer, and you know how to communicate with him right, you can get a great result that can work on the subconscious level and conscious level. Sometimes things connect to you, even if you don't know exactly what that sound is, but you like it, that vibe, the feel, that could be on a subconscious level as well. And that could be done with the right processes, from recording to mixing to mastering. If it's a good vocal delivery, everybody's going to remember it. I mean, look at Michael Jackson Thriller, okay? I know I'm saying that because Mahat asked me about that a while back, and I explained that. That album is great because everything involved with it was achieving one goal. Get that album sounding great. Great vocal delivery. Great musical arrangements and production. Great performance on every musical note. I mean, whatever they had to do there to achieve that result is a combination of a lot of things that make one thing great. So it's this amount to do this, to create this. It's a lot of hours. It's a lot of takes. It's a lot of work. And that's why there was a producer, an arranger. He probably was a producer arranger. There was performance. There was players. There was a recording engineer who recorded and mixed. There were assistants. There was a mastering engineer. There was a lot of things involved. But that's why you hire a mastering engineer, just the same way as you hire somebody who's good at what he does. You might be able to change strings on your guitar, but you might not be able to fix a broken guitar neck. I mean, you can with glue. Doesn't mean it's going to be the same as a professional luthier. So.
Hey, Maor, question for you. Besides them not hearing it because they're too close to it, what in their environment, their speakers or whatever else could be keeping them from hearing it? Because like a person will go from their studio to yours and hear stuff that they never heard. So what are the other things that would cause that?
Well, let's look at a few things. Okay, one, because you're not objective, and you mentioned that. Okay. You're also used to the surrounding area. Okay, you're not objective because one, it's you, but also you're used to your surroundings. You're used to your speakers. You're used to your acoustic environment, and also you're used to, in general, that environment. It's not just acoustic. You know, when you go to your car, it sounds different. It's not just acoustically. It's how you feel in a car. Your seat is different, so you're listening to it different. You're like this, okay? The acoustics of the car is different. The speakers in the car are different. Also, when you go out to the car, you're going there to judge your mix. So your mindset is already different, which goes back to that objectiveness. The mindset is a big, you know, it's a big parameter, you know. It could go from, if you're stressed out, you're going to listen to things different than if you're calm. Okay? If you're on a deadline and you're working and you're just trying to mix it all up, your mindset is already different than if you're like, okay, I have 4 weeks to send it out and I just finished it 4 weeks ago. I have 4 weeks to take a vacation and listen to it in the Bahamas if I want. You're probably going to listen to it different there, you know? So every speaker, every room, every monitoring system, because if you think of it, what is a monitoring system? It's a combination of it has a D2A, right? Okay, an iPod has a D2A too. iPod has also the conversion, you know, the conversion of MP3 in it. But so you have a D2A, you have some cables, could be small cables, large cables, long cables, short cables. You have an amplifier, which could be built in a speaker or outside the speaker. You have a speaker and its enclosure, and you know how many, you know, if it sets to 1-way, 2-way, 3-way, 4-way, whatever. Then you have the room acoustics. Then you have the distance between you and the speakers, and you have your mood as well. That's a lot of things that might alter your, you know, perception of it. And also, if you work now 14 hours to adjust the mix, your ears are probably tired. And you might hate that song as well, because you've worked on it so much. So there's so many parameters that come into the equation. The most common parameters that you can hear is that like, one would be a room tone that affects your mixing. Let's say you're adding a lot of low end. It comes here and it's boomy and subby. That's probably because your room was cutting certain low frequencies, or your speakers don't generate those, you know, they don't let those frequencies come out in that loud, you know, because there's a cutoff on speakers and there's dips in speakers. So certain high end won't come out as loud, or certain high end will pop. So same thing with low end. If your speakers don't go really low, you might be boosting 50 hertz and not even hearing it because the speaker's not letting it come out. You know, it's not presenting it that well. So those things, you know, come into consideration. Also, you know, if you're listening to laptop speakers, don't expect to hear low end as much. So that can. I've had somebody say, "I don't have enough low end." I'm like, "Really? Wow. Okay. Where are you listening to?" "On my laptop speaker." "Oh, okay. Now I understand." And then they're comparing it to something that has low end on laptop speakers. Well, why did it have low end on laptop speakers? Because it didn't have much mid-range. So if you don't have much mid-range and you do have lows and highs, those lows will probably sound, maybe not subby, but they will sound like low mids on those small speakers. But they didn't have the mid-range. So that's why they felt that has more low end than that mix that had not enough low end but had a bunch of mids. Did that answer? Or you wanted me to elaborate on?
That was a good answer, bro.
Okay. Anything you guys want me to elaborate on? If I don't answer it enough, you know, feel free to ask.
Lars or Harold LaRue has posted a question. I'm going to ask for him. We covered it a little bit, but we'll see if you have any extra on that. But before we get into that, there's Lars. You there, bro? Oh, your mic's not working.
Yeah.
Say something, Lars. Yep. Don't hear you, Mike, bro. I can see you. Just type your question over to the side, and if you have a question, then I'll read it off to him. Chris, you there? Chris McGathy, you there?
Yes, sir. I'm here. I got my mic on mute.
Okay. What question did you have for him? Well, first, tell us about you and where you're from. You got to unmute yourself again, Chris, and tell us where you're from. Tell us about you.
Oh, sorry, man. I'm working too. I'm listening and working here. I'm in Lawton, Oklahoma right now. Originally from Seattle, Washington. Just doing a little live work, studio work. That's about it.
All right. Do you have
hanging out with them? No, I didn't have a question. I don't know why.
All right. Ben, you want to hit him with your question? And are you on yet, Lars?
Okay. So a couple questions relating to the mastering chain. Can you guys hear me? Okay, good. I just bought a cool little compressor that I really like for mixing. It's like it's a stereo bus SSL emulation called the CL1A. And I know that a lot of mastering engineers don't like bus compression, but a lot of my clients have been preferring the bus compressor engaged on the final mix that I deliver to them. My question was, if I send you a mix and it has a little bit of that compression on it, when you start processing the mix, what is the difference between a mastering compressor and a mix bus compressor in terms of the dynamic control? Do you ever use, like if you get a mix that's unprocessed with no bus compression, do you use a similar type of compressor like an SSL bus compressor or a VCA compressor, or do you tend to go more towards a tube compressor for that initial dynamic control, or kind of how do you use these different compressors on the first stage of compression?
Well, first I'll answer your first question regarding, if what you mentioned about mastering engineers not liking bus compressors. It's not that mastering engineers don't like it. The problem is sometimes it's overdone, and as long as your compression on the mix sounds good and there's no areas where it's too much or ducking or pumping,
yeah,
there's no problem for me to do it. The problems are usually where I get a mix that, let's say, the first sounds great, the chorus just starts to collapse, like the whole stereo image collapses, and it starts ducking it too much, or when it's pumping too much where it shouldn't in some area. That's when you know that the bus compressor was not set right. Another thing with bus compression is that if it's part of the tone for real, go for it. If it's to glue the mix right, go for it. But sometimes it just is not needed because the mix was built so good without it. And I don't say take off your bus compression. I say if it's really needed, have it, and if it's not, take it off. But if you need it and you put it and we hear problems, then it might be a good idea to readjust it. Maybe change the threshold so certain areas won't duck down too much, or maybe we can hear too much pumping, or maybe attack release needs to be changed, or sometimes even just makeup gain. Maybe it's a bit distorted into it or coming out. So I don't have a problem with bus compressor. I have a problem when they're not that good, and if they're used just in order to, because they're there. You know, just because you have the piece of gear or the plug-in doesn't mean you have to put it. If it really helps, go for it. Use it. I've mastered tons of projects that had bus compressors on, and they sounded fine. I've mastered tons of them that didn't sound fine. I've mastered projects that never had a bus compressor on them, and they were awesome. But also the opposite, you know? It's really about hearing what you've done and working fine. Some producers I work with, they'll print two versions, one with bus compression, one without. And in most cases, I'll choose the one without because it sounded better, because they probably set their mix really good without it, and then just adding it kind of glued it too much, or just muffled the sound a bit, you know, pushed up certain things. But that's if the mix was based without it really good. But if you start your mix with a compressor, if you take it out, it's going to just, you know, spread things too far and collapse and just breaking apart if you glued it before. So it really depends on the client, but some clients do send me with and without, and I just listen and see what sounds better. I've had times where the bus compressor version sounded better in some cases, so it's a case by case. You asked me about if I would put an SSL compressor or not. That's why I have different types of compressors. Some of them will be more pushed, some will be more smooth, some will have kind of a low-ed emphasis feel to them. Some are more mushy, more like, you know, they'll glue, but they'll have this kind of like less openness and more glue that will kind of make it creamy, and some will make it mushier. The difference between a mixed bus compressor and a mastering compressor probably would just be, you know, quality of parts. You know, sometimes a mixed bus compressor has a mastering version, and that will probably have maybe switchable, you know, knobs instead of continuous, and some of them might be detents, and some of them can be continuous. Some mastering versions might have a different set of parameters, or some would be at different settings of thresholds or inside the sensitivity or lower noise floor. Basically, you can use every piece of gear for mastering. Just depends on how the result in the end will be. You know, if you're happy with the result, you can work with it. I have gear here that is mastering grade, and I have gear that is modified. I was mixing grade and modified for mastering.
What would be like an optimal level for you in terms of a mix? How much headroom? If I deliver a mix to you, how much headroom are you looking for generally to work with?
I would say between -3 and -6 dB peaking, dBFS. That's good because one, you're not pushing hard on your side, so your signal is not being compressed or limited or clipped, and it gives me the option to add what I feel is needed without it feeling that it's, you know, too pushed. Some projects, I will say, give me -10 if they're very dynamic and they have, you know, like areas where so much low end is developed, and then there's like a huge peak, you know, like more orchestral stuff. I would say go lower to -8, -10, because those things can develop big. But in general, -3 to -6 would be enough. You know, -4 is good too.
And last part of this is for your final brick wall limiting. Do you, I would imagine you tend to use for really loud tracks digital or plugins for your limiter.
It depends. I have hardware gear that is analog, and I have hardware gear that is digital. So hardware in both ends, you know, either analog or digital, it's real stuff. But I also have plugins as well, and I'm not opposed to having plugins. It's just that I like building the tone for a lot of cases on the desk itself.
Is there a plugin for limiting, final limiting stage that you are really feeling these days? There's so many on the market. I have a ton of them. Just curious what your preference is for that.
I think each one will give you something different. I've played with so many, and each time it's like, oh wow, this gives that, and then the client was like, I love this, and then the other one, the client would say, oh, I less like that. There's no one way. You know, you can use an L2, you can use an L3, you can use an L1, you can use a McDSP, you can use a PSP, a Fab, a Soft. I mean, they're all, to be honest with you, all those plugins can do good, can do okay, can do great, and can do, you know, it's just what you're going to push through it and how much. And I've seen people use the crappiest plugins and get great results. But those plugins are not great on other things, but they're great on what they specifically used. You know?
Is there one that you find that's exceptionally good at smashing the piss out of something?
Oh, they're all good. They're all good. I think you know, some have a better low end, some have a better clip sound, like a more edginess. They're all, I think in today's software, there's so many of them, and you can achieve so much results. I think with hardware it's a bit different because hardware depends on other hardware in the chain. So one would feed the other, and sometimes they don't work good together. With plugins, because they're all sitting in a platform that there's no cables, there's no electricity that's really involved in the same way as with gear, or the clocking is involved with it, but it's not the same as clocking different pieces of gear, and it's not how much you drive the piece of gear. And plugins, you know, there's a certain degree to how much coming to the plug from a different plug. So they're always in the same platform, so they're quite clean to begin with. So you can go really crazy with them. I would say if you're trying to achieve level, you know, like to be competitive, then use the one you're always using, get to that level, and see if it sounds good, and then change it to a different one and try to get to the same level and see which one you like better. All right? But you first have to start with one as a reference. Don't just choose the one you always use because you know it. Get to the level you want, and then exchange, like make maybe another session, and then try a different one and see. But start with one that you know and have a reference point to compare. You'll be surprised. Sometimes the one that you never worked with and didn't work out on any other project works great on that one. So, yeah. So I think you just need to have something to compare to, and there's always a price you're paying for it. One will put more low end, one will take off more low end, one will distort more but nice sound, one will distort less but won't excite you, one will be clean and you'll be like, oh wow, this is really nice, but the client wants different. So you'll have to play with it. There's no one that I can say I would prefer, because it's really case by case, and plugins, there's so many of them. You know, sometimes people say, why do you need so much gear? I'm like, why do you need so much plugins? The difference is, with plugins you can buy a lot for a small amount of money, but gear you can't. You have to pay a lot to have a lot. Or you have to pay a lot for a small amount of gear. Did that answer the question?
Yeah, it's great to hear everything you have to say. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Quick Start had came in, but Quick Start Home Guide has left. Harold, you ready for him? You gotta unmute yourself. We can't hear you, Harold. You'll have to type. You'll have to type it over there. You got to run, Ben. All right. Ben, you hit him with some good questions today. Good.
Thank you, Ben, for the questions. And if you have other questions, you know, feel free to ask or call or email. And of course, if we'll do another one soon, then come back again.
Thank you, Ma. Thank you, Maor. Have a good one.
You're welcome, bro.
All right.
Ben, if your mic's still not working, just type it over there, and I'll read it off for you. Let's see, Lars, have you gotten yours to work yet?
Check.
Check. Oh,
check.
Ben, you're good. What about you, Lars?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
No. Yes.
Yes,
All right.
you can hear me? Okay, great.
Yep, we got you. So, okay, first, Harold, tell us about you, where you're at, and tell us about you, and then asking your question. Lars, you're up next.
Cool.
Hi, I'm Harold. I'm based in the Columbus, Ohio area, southeast Ohio. I do tracking, mixing, starting to do some mastering now with some amount of success. Clients seem to like it, and I've been taking the home mastering master class. My question to you is in the very short time I've been doing this, is that the last project I worked on, I noticed the mix had a really big crescendo about 2/3 the way through, and due to the mix bus compression from the mixer, the level and the sound and everything just sort of crushed down, and that's when I started thinking about automation within a song during the mastering process. So I tried that with some okay results, but then I was able to contact the mixer, who's a friend of mine, and ask him to rerun that section without so much compression, and that worked really well. But there were other sections of other songs that I thought could benefit from some automation, and just wondering, and to further inform the question, so I've just started using Studio One. The Pro version has a dedicated mastering suite in it, basically because I needed to make the final files to send to mastering, and Pro Tools didn't allow that feature. So I started using that to assemble the final products, and I realized that within a song there's no automation options either for the plugins or volume during a song. You kind of have to flip over into sort of a Pro Tools mode or another song mode of Studio One to automate within a song. So I ended up just going into Pro Tools, making my changes there, exporting, and building the whole project from there in the very end. But once I've got everything together, I'm just wondering, is it and I heard you speak about automation a little bit beforehand. Is it unusual to automate within a song to make corrections that you think might be made, or is it more common that you just run it start to finish, and then leave it up to the mix engineer to make those balanced decisions?
My approach, first of all, is finding a sweet spot, finding the place where it naturally fits, and that may take time to find, because, like you said, there's a crescendo, there's like verses, choruses, or it would be just a dynamic, if it's an orchestra, different sections of the recordings.
Mm-hmm.
And I always try to find a sweet spot where it will work right for them all, because I would prefer not to create cuts or automate something that will sound like there is a change. But in a case that it's needed, I would first try to see if it's possible in the mix, and if not in the mix, and that's where you communicate with the mixing guy, and hopefully everybody's open to changes, hopefully. And if not, then you can do the automation. You can put it in a program where you can create volume changes. And most of them you can make that. In some you can't, and then you have to go to the programs that you can. And I understood what you meant, because some DAWs for creating a CD don't let you that option the same way. Some do half, kind of like there are tricks that you cut the automation and you cut sections and then you create them. It might work good, and in some cases you got to rebounce it to make a new one so they don't hear the cuts, and I've done those things. And I've also done automation, pure automation. I would say before you automate, try to see what's possible with no automation. Because even with automation, sometimes that automation actually changes what they want it to be. And they can be like, you know, I can hear it's dropping there, you know, or I can hear it slow. Sometimes I would automate places where the drums would feel like they're poking out too much. And hopefully still make it sound like it was poking the way they wanted, but just subtle changes that would affect less on my end, but they feel it's like what they gave you. I think if you really are unsure about it, print a version that you did with automation and without. Listen to it from beginning to end. See if you feel the change. If you don't feel the change, but it did work, like if you don't feel the change, but it works because it's not making it sound different, but it helped, then send that version. Or if you have good communication with the person and he's willing to listen to both versions, the one with and the one without, and give you an honest opinion about it, you know, say, hey, I really need to know, don't think of me as putting time into it. Just think of it if it's right or wrong. I put the time because I wanted. I don't want you to feel sorry for me putting the time and take that version because of that. Take the version that sounds right for you. If it's possible for him to do so, you just let him decide, because then he can tell you if he feels that what you did helped. But if you're not sure you can do that with him, then listen to it again and see if what you've done was good. Sometimes it's on the border, like on the fence. If you're not sure about it, maybe loosen a bit of the automation to make it closer to the original. You know, in most cases, what they deliver to you, even if it's not the right thing, they're happy with it. So, you know, it's a decision. Do I touch it or not? Sometimes you touch it, and that's the whole world for them on a positive side, good, on a positive note. But sometimes that change, oh, I didn't like what it did. You know, it's a half a dB or a dB, but they felt it, and they didn't like it. So, you know, they can be very confident in what they're doing, and sometimes it's confidence from the right perspective, and sometimes it's confidence just because they're confident in themselves, and you're not sure if that is translated into their work itself. They could be confident, but it's not showing that it's good, and you kind of try to feel that area, you know. Some people don't like to communicate much on both sides, which I can understand because you don't want to get into a discussion that will lead to an argument. But sometimes you gotta do that discussion in order to achieve the best result. So it's how far you're willing to go with it. And you know what? You'd be surprised. Some professionals don't have patience for professionals. Like, they don't have patience to try things out, and some do. Did that answer the question? Or
It did. Thank you. So going back to the very first part of your explanation, you like to go to get the sort of the loudest section, or the most signature section of the song feeling right, and then just hopefully the rest of the song kind of feels good from there.
Hey, what's important in a song is the song as a whole.
Yeah.
But the other part that is important in the song is the main feeling of it. If there's only one loud section, try to find what fits for the song and most of it, and then see how that applies to the loud section. If it doesn't, and that loud section is taking a big part of the song, and you have to readjust it maybe in a way that it will compromise here, but in overall it will work.
Gotcha.
And you have to see if that loud section is a small part or if it's a important part of the song.
Yeah.
And if it takes a lot of space. If it's not taking a lot of space but it's important, there's still going to be a compromise.
Mm-hmm.
But if it takes a lot of space, then you will probably have to take that in consideration as more important to approach it and see how it works the other way, or automate to different sections and do each one to what fits it.
Right.
But I would
Thank
say
you.
find what's the most important part and work with that.
Thank you.
No more for him. All right, Lars, you're up. Yeah,
Okay,
unmute yourself.
Yeah, I just did. Can everybody hear me? Thumbs up if you can hear me.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Well, first of all, thanks for having me here, Maud. I'm Lars. I come from the Netherlands, and I work on EDM music, combining it with acoustic instruments. Exactly. But I'm also doing some mastering and getting into the game, the business. And what I just thought was you're doing quite a lot of work. What would you have done else if you know what you know right now, by maybe approaching clients or workflow, or things that pop in mind right now? Can you tell me?
There's an American or English saying, hindsight 2020. Basically, if you look back, you always say, oh, I could have done this, I could have done that. Oh, if I had that piece of gear, I would do it better. Now, there are some things that when you listen to them, you're like, oh, you know what? I did really good, even then, for that. Or in some cases, you would say, I could have done better if I was, thinking in that approach. It's always a combination of either what you knew then, what you had then, and how did you deal with things in general, customer-wise, professional-wise, technical-wise. And there are things that I would go back and fix because, in every aspect of this business. But at the same time, I couldn't have done it because to get to where I am now, I had to go through these obstacles. I had to go through these changes, mistakes, learning curves. And a lesson learned is very important. And like I said, you don't lose a gig, just the gig itself. You might lose what you've done with it and it didn't reach to where it was supposed to. But the gig itself, doing it, and even if it wasn't the one they choose, you didn't lose the gig. The gig itself you got, and you learned from it. And you made progress while dealing with it, and maybe the aftermath of it, if that's what you want to call it, or looking back and learning the mistakes and how to deal with it and how to educate yourself to deal with those situations. So you're going to always do that, and the more you're going to be in this industry, the more you're going to have to deal with that on larger scales, especially if you'll be aware of that. Some people, they do their thing and they're like, I don't care. Some people do their thing and they're like, oh, this is interesting. What can I learn from it? And it doesn't mean the other guy is wrong or right. It's just how you as a person want to deal with it. Do you want to go back and try to figure it out, or do you just want to leave it? Both can get great results. And sometimes the guy who just leaves it and doesn't care has an easier life. He's not occupied by it, and some others are occupied by it, and then they go to the next project and they learn how to deal with it. and because of what they've done. So it's always going to be hindsight 2020, and in some cases you'll be, what did I think then? Or, well, they approved it, they loved it, so be it. So your mic is mute, by the way. So that's what you're going to do. That's what you're going to deal with all the time. Interesting concept about EDM. Basically, there's no music called EDM.
No.
Because EDM is electronic dance music. Well, most dance music is electronic for the past 20 years, unless it's playing live by other instruments. So the term EDM, is kind of a term to say that you do contemporary type of electronic music. Techno, house, trance, psytrance, drum and bass, dubstep, you name it, techno in all its variations, house, progressive house, they all exist for so many years. Actually, electronic music exists way longer than a lot of music. Electronic music basically was just creating music with electronic instruments. That dates back to the end of the 1800s. Okay.
1800s.
Yeah,
You
the
say?
end. Yeah.
Okay, that's far way back. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if you look back at the history, there were electronic instruments invented in the beginning of the century, of the 19th century. So I won't say.
Hold on. Like what?
Well, let's start this. What's the question? How many of you guys know what a Hammond organ is?
Yeah, but you said like 1800s.
Yeah, 1895 was the first. 1890s was the teleharmonium. That was the first electronic instrument. It was made from transformers that they were buzzing when you put electricity through it.
What'd you call it? Because I'm gonna look that up. What'd you call it?
Teleharmonium.
Teleharmonium?
Yep. How about a vocoder? Anybody know what a vocoder is?
Oh yeah.
Do you know what it was invented for?
No.
The telephone industry. The first vocoders were invented in the beginning of, what was that, 1917, 1930, yeah. Depends on the type. The theremin was around 1917. Hammond, which is an organ, 1936.
You did your history on that.
Okay. Telharmonium. I got that, and you're right. Wow, 1800s. And give me another one you said. You said Hammond, and what else?
Vocoder. Theremin.
Theremin, yes.
Theremin?
Yeah, theremin was invented in 1917. Leon Theremin. Vocoder. Around, the voder was, I think, 1920 or something like that. Hammond organ, 1936. So there was so much music created by electronic instruments way before. And there's also electrical instruments, which is different. That's electric guitar, electric piano. Okay.
Yeah, but isn't it the way that people say today EDM? Then we'll know where we talk about. EDM is the big rooftop on everything of the dance music these days. Maybe like that, or.
When I talk to a client and he says he does EDM, I will ask him, what type of EDM are you doing? Is it dubstep style? Is it EDM with rock elements, like with guitars, because you can do EDM with guitars in it.
Yeah, I do.
Is it techno? Is it trance with acoustical instruments? Or is it like with Middle Eastern instruments or Oriental instruments? Okay. The reason I'm asking questions is because it helps me understand what their goal is. If they want to have something really energetic and aggressive, probably acoustic instruments will sound weird on them. So I have to figure out how I can make it loud without ruining it too much. Because acoustic instruments will sound a bit edgy when they're clipped or loud. So, you have to take that into consideration. Also, you know, in Europe, every country has its own folklore, you know, has history. And when you bring that history into current music, sometimes it will work just like this, and sometimes it will work like this. There's things clashing. Then you have to figure out, okay, the arrangement on this instrument doesn't fit well, so let's take it off. And then, you know, you're building it differently. And what makes things good is the understanding what works together really well. It could be either arranging it right or picking the right tones.
Yeah.
So when you ask me, going to the question originally you asked me, what I would done different, or I don't know, it's every project I will pull up, I'll be like, okay, I can live with that, or, you know, I should have put a different compressor EQ, or, well, the client loved it, so that's what's important. Or, I would do it differently today, or, you know, it's, you know, the more you'll do, the more you'll see that happening later on. And if you do not a lot, then the difference between one and the different one would be huge all the time, because you're always progressing. It'll be huge.
Yeah. Oh, great.
If you do something now and do it next year, it's going to sound different.
Yeah. Yeah. The smallest changes will sound sometimes so big. So yeah, well, every time there is a new opportunity, a new chance, a new day.
Yeah. What city are you in Holland?
Sorry, one more time, please.
What city or town are you? Well, I said Holland, the Netherlands.
Yeah. There is well, that's something else. There's a cute video on YouTube, but I'm in the north of the Netherlands, between it was nearby Groningen.
And what other country is above it or close to it?
Country Germany is on the right side of it. We have Belgium beneath us.
No, near
France.
you.
Near you. The biggest place.
Yeah.
Leeuwarden from Duitse Cruise. Maybe you know her.
No, I mean, what country is close to you where your border is, specifically? Where you are?
Germany it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Germany, for example, they have a lot of types of music there, because Germany, for a while, had, you know, East Germany and West Germany. So the influences on the sonics were if you come from Eastern Europe or Western Europe. That's why in Germany there's so much types. I've been fortunate enough to be in Germany and in Holland. I used to go a lot in Europe to festivals, so I would see a lot of that. And those two places are very happening, by the way. There's a lot of music coming up, you know, from the Netherlands and from Germany.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is combined music, like hybrids, crossover music. They'll put, you know, they'll bring elements from East and West and combine, and it's wonderful.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. I strongly recommend visiting Germany and Holland and other places in Europe as well, Italy and Spain and everywhere.
Yeah, it is beautiful. It's beautiful Europe to see and to travel. Yeah.
And it's big in EDM.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah, the festival season is good. So.
Yeah, there's a lot of festivals in Europe. I've been in a lot. That's a great place.
Yeah.
So, any other question? Did I answer the question, by the way?
Not at the moment for me. Thank you for now.
Did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Harold said something about the DDMFs. Harold, what was that?
Check out DDMF Meta plugin to host your VST on Pro Tools 11. It's already inexpensive, but on sale. Okay. Yeah, Harold is giving us a tip about plugins called DDMF Meta plugin.
I'm sorry, that was in response to a chat question about someone being disappointed in not being able to use VSTs in Pro Tools 11. That was my response to them.
Ah, okay. I didn't say it.
Yeah, right, yeah. Ilan
Benita.
Yeah, that's all.
I said it right. Right? Ilan Benita. Yes.
I went. Yeah. When you sounded like a Martian, bro. When you said 1800s, you sounded like a Martian, like an alien. I went back looking that stuff up, and I'm seeing black and white pictures on the stuff that you were talking about, Maor. It's really surprising how far stuff goes back, and how smart like the guys were back in the past. But I've got a whole bunch of Googles, Wikipedias up and stuff right now. So when this is over, I'm going to be reading my butt off and watching videos, getting an education, getting my edumacation. Okay, did anybody else have a question for Maor? Nikhil, before he left, he posted, basically he wanted to say thank you, Maor.
No, okay, great. I appreciate the thank you, and if you see it later on, I enjoyed the questions. I think that it's very important to have the right questions, because those bring the answers that are are used later on. I go to a lot of clinics. I do a lot of clinics, but I also go to them because you always learn by hearing what people are asking. If you question something, it's not bad to do so. It just makes you interested in things and make you open a discussion. One of the reasons that I know a bit about electronic music and its past is because I look at music as something really broad, and when they say there's nothing new, it's true, there's nothing new. It's only different combinations, or the same combinations in different times, because everything was invented already. It's just how it's implemented, okay? Digital, by the way, goes back to the 70s, okay? It's not new, okay? CDs were already invented. 82, you already had CDs, okay? And digital recordings were already in the 70s done in small scale, but they were done. For example, digital delays or pitch shifters, they were digital, and they were done then as well. So, those things are not, automation. These things are not new, okay? Computer DAWs existed for a long time in different ways. Some of them were just editing stations for one track or two tracks, and later on, they combined, and you had MIDI back then. If you look back at MIDI, it's not the same as what today you use. Today it's just, you can do a piano roll and blah, 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 boom, you got it. Back then, you got to put a sequencer, connect it to a drum machine, connect the drum machine to a bass line machine, to a synthesizer, and predating MIDI, you had also other formats that connected certain synthesizers. It was always hard work to get everything to work together. Today it's much easier. So, be happy that we're in a generation now that everything is really easy in terms of getting it to work. When you're complaining about a Pro Tools crash, think about a synthesizer in the 60s that would get out of tune during recording. The oscillators were not stable. There were people who had to go and tune it in, to make it work. So, we're in a good place now, and as long as we can create and not abuse what we're creating, then, and there's a limit, we'll probably abuse it in a certain degree. Any question? By the way, today I can push longer than before, so if you have a question, I can do till 1.
Anita.
If you want.
Yeah, one last question. I don't know if it makes sense, but is it common to have mastering shoutouts when the label send the mix to different mastering engineer? And do you approach it differently if you know that the song has been given to different mastering engineer and not only you?
I didn't hear the question well.
Oh, like, is it common to have a label sending a mix, like the same mix, to different mastering engineer, like kind of a blind test? And do you approach it differently than when you know you're the only one, like, doing the project?
If it's common or not, yes, it's common. It doesn't mean it's everybody does that. Not all mastering engineers will take, do a shootout, and not all bands will do so. I personally think that sometimes a shootout doesn't put the best out of you, because if you know you're competing and you don't know how the competitors are, it's kind of hard to know, what they're giving in terms of level, and you might fall for the level, you might fall for, the speed of your, if you give them faster, you give them slow, if you just gave them quick, or you gave it 2 days after and they were making some decisions. I personally don't like the shootouts. I think that a lot of times it's not bringing the best out of me. I like to work on a project and work with the client to achieve what they want. And if it takes a few takes, that's fine. If it takes more than a few takes, we'll do it. How many revisions we need to get to that exact sound. If it means they need to go fix in the mix, that's fine with me as well, and I will redo it. Not every band does those shootouts. Some people take it. If it's a big project and it's a good pay, if you get it, some people will say, hey, I'll do the shootout because I might win it. I've done shootouts. It's not something I do every day. I usually prefer not to, but I've done it on certain projects where I knew that project had a big potential. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. Sometimes you get really close, and they're like, hey, just so you know, you were the second pick. You were that close to winning it. And there were a few others that were far, and sometimes they'll say, hey, man, yours is the chosen one. And or sometimes, you were like a few others, and they didn't pick. I don't think it's always good to do that, because I don't think, if you ask everybody to do a shootout, don't expect to get their best work at that shootout, because they're just doing it once. There's no discussion on how to improve it unless they're willing to work with you on it. So I don't say go for a shootout. I think it's best to find somebody and work with him, and if there's obstacles, approach them. And I think it's better than trying out different people, and also in most cases the shootout is on one song that probably doesn't represent the album. It's either the best mixed, best sounding song or the worst one. Because usually, the best one, you're like, okay, this is the best mixed one. I want to check how these guys will work with it because it sounds the best. Or, oh, it sounds the worst, but let's see how they can improve it. Sometimes it would be something in the middle, but a test doesn't represent the whole album. A whole album would be, a combination of songs. So one song would sound in a way that different than the other, and you want to make them fit, and it depends on what song is before and what song is after. So that test won't reveal the final result of a whole album, unless that test is just a single. And if it's a single, then it will represent itself. Did that answer, Elon?
Yeah. Thanks for the Google Hangout. That's good.
Okay.
Anyone else have a question for him? All right, I'm going to read off this question for you. Let's see. Oh, well, first, my understanding is that you were self-taught. Is that correct?
Yes, I didn't grow up, if that's what you call it, I didn't develop my mastering skills working for a mastering engineer. Like I wasn't I wasn't working for other mastering engineers. I developed my own skills throughout the years of working. I did work for producers and mixers and engineers, you know, learning, you know, some of the process of recording and mixing from them. But mastering is something I took on myself.
How did you learn it?
Trial and error, taking a lot of things and trying to make them sound better if I could. Was, you know, I had a goal to be a mastering engineer because I felt that it's something I could do good, or at least try to do good as much as possible. And I started mastering stuff of my friends, and then, you know, more and more, and I got better in it. And then I had friends who were producers, engineers that worked with bands, and they needed somebody to master, and I was jumping on that gig, you know, saying, hey, I'll do it. And after a while I got better in it, and it started to be a profession. And
so you were the guy that everybody talks about saying is out there ruining mixes for a while.
Who was I? What?
A lot of the guys, when we're starting out doing mastering, they get beat up for ruining mixes. Basically, is what people say. You're not a top-notch guy. When we're not top-notch and we're starting out, we don't do as good as the top-notch guys. You know, the top-tier guys. And it's just in our group, PENSADOS students, you'll hear that a lot. Guys will get beat up because they're not the top-notch guys yet. You know, they're not at that level. So I was poking fun at you. So huh?
No, I understand. If I was ruining or not,
they liked it.
Well, maybe I did ruin. I don't know. I can say that most of them liked it. I think what I was doing is I was diverting the attention. Basically, I was taking something that sounds really bad, and just instead of making the listener feel how bad it is, I was just diverting the attention from how bad it is to, hey, that's a nice vocal line or something. I was just tweaking the frequencies and the dynamics in a way that instead of they're focusing how bad it is, I leveled it up. You know, I raised it a grade. You know, instead of horrible, it was sounding bad. Instead of bad, it was sounding okay. Instead of okay.
I was going to ask you about that. Because there's, I used to read in Home Recording Magazine, I don't know, 1993, 4, 5 time frame. I would always read how mastering engineers would save a mix, and like now when we talk, it's like if it's messed up, redo it. But you know, to redo a mix back then was a whole different story. And there's all these stories about mastering engineers saving the mix, and I wanted to ask you about some of that. And there's guys who will not put in the work on a horrible mix. They won't even deal with it. And I found it fun and interesting to try to make the stuff better. You know, you get this horrible thing, you try to make it more presentable. It was a fun challenge to me for a while. I'm tired of doing it. I'm on to other things. But no, I was just having fun with you by saying that, because when we first start out, you know, we're not the greatest. So anyway. To mixes that were horrible, what type of stuff were you doing to make them more presentable?
Well, you know, usually when something is horrible, the balances are really bad. You can try to change the balances by compressing it in different ways or EQing it in different ways that makes it feel like some of the instruments who, let's say, were too low got up, or some instruments that were poking out going back in, or tightening it. Basically the same things that apply to good mastering for good, you know, like, because you can do different things to it. The difference between a good mastering engineer that has to deal with something bad and someone who deals with something bad on a normal basis is a person who works with bad recordings is so used to it, it's not depressing him to work on it. You know, it's like, that's a new challenge. Okay, I work with it. A person who works on good stuff and has to work on something horrible, he might take it as a challenge, but he'll feel like it's so bad to him. and it's not that he can't do it. He can do it. You know, it's how much he's willing. Now, some people are, like you said, they would say, no, it's bad, I don't want to work with it. And some people take the challenge and say, okay, I'll try to work with it. And some will say, hey, you know what, I can do my best. They're hiring me for this, so let's do it. I've had times where I refused the mix, just not because I wanted to refuse the gig. I just said, look, the mix has a problem here and here, and there's a problem there. Please fix it, and then I can master it. It will sound much better. And they will go back and fix it, and then I had a better, better presentation of the mix to work with from beginning instead of the first one that I was sent, which is not presenting the mix in a good way. So, and I have friends who actually refuse to work like they'll say, I ain't taking that gig, and more power to them if they can do that. Some can't, some can. I just, I look at it as if somebody's hiring me, they hiring me to try to do what I can. I'm not a magician. I can't turn a broom to an airplane. Okay, but maybe I can take that broom and make it, I don't know, a wiper. Maybe I can change it in a certain way, and if people hire me to do that, I hope they know that they can't expect me to give them something that is not there to start with. There's a limitation to what I can do with it, but I'll try to do, something good to it. And in some cases, I actually would refer them to either refer them back to the mix and tweak it, or if they do them by themselves and they don't know how to do it exactly, I might suggest some mixing engineers that I know that can work in their budget. And there have been more than a few times where I did that, and everybody was super happy. The band was happy because they didn't have to mix it themselves, and it was hard for them to do it. The guy who mixed it enjoyed the process, and I got a better mix to work with. And in the end, the mastering sounded great, and everybody's like, you know what? It was the right thing to do. So it all boils down to how much you can talk with them, how much they're willing to listen, and how much is, in your hands. The approach towards a bad mix and a good mix is, in a bad mix, you might have to change a lot to improve. In a good mix, you might want to just enhance it in a way that you're not ruining it. And that's a skill by itself, by the way. Not to ruin something is a skill. Okay? Some people think that just because a good mix comes your way, it's probably easy. No, it's not easy, because it's easy to ruin it. You want to make sure you're not degrading what's there. You want to make sure that you're going to make it even sound better and not just ruin it. And there's great mastering engineers in all levels. Some of them are well known, some of them are not. In the end, if they have the talent and the knowledge to do it, and they do it good, that's good. They don't have to be famous. They can be good doing it, and some are really skilled with bad mixes because they do that so much that they know how to alter them in a way that they would sound really nice. And some are very skilled with really good sounding mixes, and they know where not to touch. And some know both of it. It really depends on what comes your way. If you get a lot of projects that need restoration, you're going to be a restoration expert probably. If you get a lot of projects in hip-hop, you'll probably know how to dial that low end nice. If you get a lot of projects in rock, you'll probably know how to make the mid-range energy spread nice and make it explosive, make it exciting. And you can do a lot of, you can also know how to do a lot of types of music. It's not just limited. But bad mixes need different type of mastering than good mixes. And it doesn't mean that one, it takes more time than the other, because there's a limit to what you can do to a bad mix as well. you can change the hell out of it and make it sound good, but good as compared to the original. It's not. It might not sound as good as a great mix. So, did that answer the question?
Yes. Joseph, we're gonna get to you. Let me you got tell me if I've read this, if you've answered this already. Dominique Mosher is saying, I'm in the process of getting my audio engineering degree, and I go into my first year. I'm going into my first year. Are there any rookie mistakes that I'll need to keep an eye on for myself to make sure that I don't make any of my projects?
Rookie mistakes. Okay, one mistake is trying to get the final product in the beginning stage. Okay, it's really hard to get the final product in the beginning stage. Okay, so don't hurry. You know, don't expect to get from A to Z in one day. And that's sometimes what rookies do. Instead of doing everything as sections and finishing it and improving it, and then going back and re-improving it, which re-improving, it's kind of a weird way to say it, but that's basically, you know, you're improving and then you're figuring out that what you did is not good enough, then you go back and redo it. Usually rookie mistakes are overconfidence in what you're doing and assuming that, okay, it sounds good, it's great. You know, when somebody says tweak the knob till it sounds great, you know, it doesn't mean that if it sounds great to you that moment, it sounds great. Okay, be aware that it might sound good to you, but the next day it might sound different to you. So, you know, don't rush into it too fast. That's one rookie mistake. Second rookie mistake is, you know, don't try to get to a place where you're competing too much, because part of that competition will take a lot of your good knowledge off. Because in order to compete, you got to create a certain product. But if you're just heading to that place where I'm competing, you're missing everything that's in between. And everything in between is really what you're studying and working for. You know, you can't jump and say, oh, okay, I made it compatible with this and this and this. Yeah, okay, it sounds in that level, volume. But how come that one has a better low end than yours? How come this sounds like that? How come the writing here is better? How come the production is better? Because this whole thing between here and here is what's missing. That's another rookie mistake. Trying to go from here to here to create, you know, without understanding there's a whole thing here. There's the whole dynamics of talking with people and communicating and creating a performance and the delivery and capturing that. Okay. Another thing is, just because you have 200 plugins in the bundle you bought doesn't mean you have to use all those 200. That's another rookie mistake. You know, people are like, I have this, I have that. Oh, let's put it there. Let's put it. And also, just because the other guy did it doesn't mean you can do it. Okay? I mean, you can't put the plug. It doesn't mean it's going to sound like him. So find the ones that you understand and work with and they sound good to you and put them and use them. Don't just put them because you just saw a YouTube video or you heard that this producer uses. Yeah, it's cool if he uses it, but he knows what to do with it. If you don't know what to do with it, like he does, don't expect to put it and make it sound like him. You know, it's like guitar players, the sound comes from a lot of things like amp, speaker, cables, pedals, guitar, but it's their fingers. It's how they mute. It's how they strum. It's how they put their fingers on the strings. So it's a combination of things, but the source is their fingers. So if you don't know that plug too much, just because that plug emulates a really expensive EQ or compressor, doesn't mean you're going to benefit from it. That's another rookie mistake. Okay, and don't try to emulate what you don't need. Sometimes you'll get mixes that the guy went for a vintage sound, But you can hear he doesn't know what vintage sound is. He was just putting all these saturation plugins on the instruments, and in the end you got this mix that is just very saturated and very muffled at the same time, instead of understanding that that saturation doesn't need to happen on everything. So that's another rookie mistake. And also, when people say trust your ears, yes, trust your ears. That's true. But trust your ears by checking it in a lot of systems, in a lot of places. Because if you're not used to your working environment, or if you haven't worked with that speaker for a while in room, and you haven't heard how it translates outside, then you're trusting the wrong thing. Okay? You have to always remember, not everything translates the same way as you assume it is. That's another rookie mistake. And you know, these are more philosophical approaches. In terms of specs, some of today's music is based on mistakes that were made, and they created their own aesthetics. So, you know, I can't say, you know, back in the day you'd say, oh, you can only reach that level, you can only reach that, or if you have to change an EQ that certain degree, it's better to move the mic. Well, some people will move the mic, some will just EQ the hell out of it. And nothing is wrong or right, it's approach, and everybody has a different approach. But sometimes those mistakes, or those thinking outside the box, or just experimenting, or just doing things without knowledge, created new sounds and new approaches. And guess what? Some of those are the things that are now the most current ways of working, or hip, you know. So that's what I think regarding another, you know, rookie mistake that might happen. Other than that, you know, all the specs, you know, there are mistakes, but those are not the most important ones. I think that, you know, the rookie mistake may be just, you know, don't crap your work. You know, don't deliver it wrong. You know, if you deliver it outside, make sure you're naming it right. You know, don't get mixed up. Send the mix, audio mix 1. It's gonna mess up somewhere. You know, it's gonna be somebody also had probably audio 1. You know, just name the song, artist, or just, you know, make sure your file management is good, and do backups. That's important. Have another hard drive and back up everything. Because when you don't have a backup, it's a problem. And even backups can, you know, get messed up. I back up twice. So I have on my computer, and I have 2 other drives outside the computer that I back up to. So those are really the rookie mistakes. Other ones, the technical ones, you know, those happen, but you gotta kind of, you know, you gotta learn your system, you gotta learn your plugs, you gotta learn your stuff, and don't expect to know 100% of each thing you do. You know, 20% can be enough. You know, knowing 20% of a compressor and EQ is enough to either do something great or be dangerous. So that's fine. Don't expect to know everything at once. You know, it's a learning curve. Did that answer the rookie question? He
has plenty, bro. He has plenty. Thank you. Joseph, welcome.
Thank you, Matt. And great conversation, guys. It's been listening for about an hour and a half, but it was on my iPad, and I didn't trust it to try to join the group. You know, Mayor, you've mentioned that you're not a diplomat, but I have to tell you that the amount of communication that you're stressing and the way you're speaking about it, I'd say you're quite the diplomat. I'm a big proponent of communication, to the point where I've gotten I've got bitched at before a little bit by some of the folks who've hired me because they want me to shut up and get to work and not keep talking about it, you know. And I really agree with you. The more you get to know what someone is like and where they're from and how they think, the easier it is to give them what they're asking for, you know. But there is one thing that happens to me that I'd kind of like to hear how you feel about it. Is I call it repetition deafness. After 8 hours in a studio, when I've tracked somebody and I'm going to retrack something, I get to the point sometimes where everything sounds great and it really doesn't, because I've heard the same thing too many times and I can't tell the difference anymore. And I need the day away. For me, sometimes it takes not hearing anything about those tracks until the next day or 2 days later. Have you come across any quick fix for what I call repetition deafness?
Yeah. Well, first I want to answer the reason I'm not a diplomat. A diplomat is a profession. Okay? And you get money being a diplomat. You get paid for doing that. Mm-hmm. I do stress out the communication because I think throughout the years there's more and more of that not happening. Yes. People think that they can communicate by throwing 2 words in a text, which is totally wrong. Okay? And I'm stressing communication as an important factor because as time goes by, people less and less communicate. They think they're communicating. Okay? No, when they say email is the fastest way to reach them, email is not the fastest way to reach them. It's probably the way they would like to be communicated by or approached by, but it's not faster. Okay? Mm-hmm. So you have to put things in the right place and proportion. Mm-hmm. And sometimes emailing is slow because you're waiting for a response instead of getting a fast response. So that's why I'm stressing so much about the communication factor. And even emails, there's ways to, you can still communicate. Regarding what you said about repetition deafness, the only way I think you can fix that is by, 1, taking breaks in your work and find reasons to take breaks. Like for me, my phone during sessions is on and it rings. Now it's not ringing because we're recording a live, we're doing a live interview and live Q&A, and I don't want this to affect our, transmission. But during a session, my phone is always on. If there's a call, I stop and I pick it up. That immediately takes me out of the zone for a few minutes, and that helps a lot. Second thing, you have to know where you're reaching a point where, oh, I'm doing too much, and that's really hard to know. So if you don't know that enough, and like I said, it's hard to know. Even if you know, you're never knowing exactly where that point is. Gotcha. Then you have to create artificial ways to make you take that break. So the artificial breaks are that, like I said, phone. You can also set a timer if you want. I don't do that, but you can do that. Put a timer every hour. Take a 5-minute break, or you can just feel thirsty or hungry and say, hey, you know what? I got to take now 10 minutes, 15 minutes to go out and buy a sandwich or drink something. So you can create that by telling yourself, this is what I need to do now, this is what I need to do later on, or put timers or phone. Or you can ask your friend, hey, I need you to call me in 4 hours from now so I can take a break. Otherwise, I will forget about it.
Right.
Right. You forget to eat, you forget to drink because you're into the session so much.
Yeah.
So let yourself, if you're mixing and you can keep your phone on ringing, that's fine. Recording, it's a bit different because it might interfere, come in the microphones or whatever, or, it might, if the artist sees you record, while you're recording and you're like, oh, I got to answer this, and he's like, it can turn him, and make him lose a concentration. But if you're mixing, you can tell yourself, I gotta take that break.
Mhm.
And the good thing about phone is you're hearing something different. You're hearing a phone call. It's talking. It's not music. And if you take a break and you're driving to eat something, don't listen to music when you're taking that break. Don't go take a break and play the best song or check out the new song that is
Mhm.
everybody digs. No, don't do that. Just don't listen to music in that break. Or listen to something else just to have a different perspective at that moment. But do things that are not what you would do in the session. Well,
Mhm.
now I'm suggesting crazy stuff, but
I get it.
basically what I'm saying is just do things that will interrupt your concentration, because the concentration is part of that repetition deafness. You're concentrated on that, and you're so concentrated that you're not even, you're remembering the lines of the music, the lyrics, and everything.
Mhm. Right on.
Oh,
No, I hear you. I get it. I get it. That makes sense.
Okay.
I very easily can get into that zone and forget. 4 hours can go by, and it seems like 5 minutes to me.
Yep.
Especially
Exactly.
especially when I'm mixing, because it's just easy. I like I like it. I like listening. I like doing what I'm doing.
I can get stuck on a fade for 10 minutes.
Yeah, gotcha.
Just like, it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right,
Mm-hmm.
And that could be quick changes, but I could get stuck on it, if I need, or if I feel that that's what's doing it,
Mm-hmm.
So, did that answer the question?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Okay, guys.
Break the concentration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Guys, I can do one last question, and I have to start a session. I pulled an hour plus, more than I expected, but it was fun, and I am happy I could. So let's do one last question.
Harold, do you want to take it? If not, I got one for him. But you get less time with him on here than I do, so you want to take it? Okay, I'll take it. I'm looking at all that gear you got behind you, Maor. And yeah. So, if you had to do a session, if you had to start mastering with the knowledge that you have now, if you had to start mastering and you lost all that gear and all you could buy is plugins, we hand you a Mac computer and speakers, whatever speakers you want, and you needed, and all you could use was plugins. What plugins or what would you get? What type of stuff would you get? And if there's anything specific that you would get so that you could get the job done efficiently, with precision, whatever. What would you get?
So
and why? Why?
So you already want me to start on a depressive mode, right? That I lost my... You have to have some sense of humor in this business, otherwise how what I would buy? Well, if I can get the same speakers I have, because I know them, and the same room, these are passive speakers, so they're powered by an power amp.
Right, no, say you can get all your same speakers back, all of that back, but the only thing is you don't have all that stuff in that desk. You have to buy plugins.
Okay.
What plugins would you choose and why?
Okay. It's a good question, and it's one of those ones that I wouldn't want to dream about. No, just joking. What I would do is this. First of all, before I go buy the plugins, I go to, really, like, what I would like to do is I would call my friends that I know use plugins, okay, and say, look, I'm starting from scratch. I do have my monitoring in room. Tell me what you see that you use a lot and gets you good results, but it's easy to learn. Because, and this is where the problem is with gear in general, or plugins, or DAWs. There's quality, and there's workflow. I don't know why I did this, but it looks nice. Quality is very important, but if your workflow is super slow because that program is slow to work on, then it defeats the purpose. Because if you work a long time to just get something to sound right, because the workflow is so slow on it, your attention is getting lost very quick. So you might be, let's say the program has a great audio engine, but it takes you an hour to do a fade, okay? Or you move the tracks and they don't sit together right, and you're busy putting out fires. You're not getting the results you want, okay? If, on the other hand, the workflow is super easy, the quality might be less good, but you know how to get the results you want and the sound you want, then it will be easier to work with that. And maybe it's less good than the quality, but you can get the results you wanted fast. So the ideal situation is both getting the quality and the workflow. In that case, you might have to combine certain things, like a certain DAW with certain plugins that work together really well. So I would ask what sounds good, but also what's easy to work on. Maybe I go and look at it. Some plugs are very complicated, but if you know them well, it's easy for you. But if you don't know them well and you got to start from scratch, don't get those. Get the ones that are not complicated for you to work with. And then later on, try the ones that are complicated and figure out if they fit your workflow. So I know it's very vague to say what I'm saying and not specific packages, because I found that some great producers use stock plugins that come with the DAW, and they get great results. You know, and you give them a really good sounding plugin, but it's different for them and they're not used to it, then it might not work. I would say if you have to start from scratch, if you're a professional, usually there's good packages that probably cost quite a lot of money, but they're good. I would invest in them. If you're not a professional, buy the cheaper ones, but buy a lot and see what you like best and try to focus on them and improve your work with them. I've worked with plugins that cost $2,000 a plugin. I've worked with plugins that cost $200 a plugin. You know, I can't say specifically do this, because most of you know the plugins that are out, and most of them are good. You know, there's Waves plugins that are great. I specifically have Waves hardware here, the Max BCL and the L2 as hardware. But Waves plugins, they're great plugins. McDSP plugins, they're great plugins. Sonorous, they're great plugins. NewGen, they're great plugins. PSP are great plugins. Softtube and you know, and Steven Slate and what else? Plugins. There's so many. You know, even at TC Electronics, you know, they do a lot of hardware, but they also make plugins versions of some of the hardware stuff they do. Synaptic, stock plugins that come with Pro Tools or with Logic or Cubase, Cakewalk, Studio One. There's just so many plugins. Metric Halo, they do hardware stuff, you know, converters and interfaces, but they also make plugins. Isotope, you know, they're all really good companies. They make good stuff. It's just what you do with it in the end of the day, you know. And I think, you know, you can buy a really high quality plugin package, and if your mixes are not good, it's not because of the plugins. You know, it's not because of your converters. You know, maybe a good converter will help you hear things better or capture things better, but if your mix doesn't sound good, it doesn't sound good. That's all. You know, you might have to change plugins just because you need to find different EQs or compressors you can work with better. Sonox plugins are also great. They're just, fortunate enough to have a lot of them in my disposal. Not like most people. Most people have even more than me. I only have, a certain amount, which for me is a lot. But for a lot of other people I know, it's like, dude, what do you have there? Like 20 plugins? That's nothing. We got 400. I don't know even if I have 20 of them. But like 20 other companies, not like Stalker. But I can't say one set, and I think it's not fair to just say one set, because it also depends on your DAW. Some plugins sit really well in that DAW, and they can sound awesome. Some are too heavy for that platform you're using, either the DAW or the computer configuration you have. So it might work against you. Just know, if you're buying good plugins, they're usually taking a lot of DSP power as well, or RAM. At least most of them, but not all of them. So it's really important to invest in a good computer that has good RAM and good CPU.
All right. Since you said you have the L2 and the Max BCL, do either of those do the plugins actually sound like that gear, bruh? Or is there a big difference?
I think that's a question that if you ask 10 people, you're going to have 10 answers that might be very different or very close.
Okay.
I own 5 L2s.
5 Waves L2s?
Yes. Yeah.
You have 5 Waves L2s in that studio right now?
I have another studio. I have 2 studios, but this studio itself has 3 L2s. So, actually, I have a 6 L2, but that's a repair unit. This studio has 2 L2s, that one here and another one, but I do have 1 Max BCL. I think they sound different than the plugs. Maybe it's because they're part of a configuration of other pieces of gear, and where a plug-in you just apply in the DAW, so it doesn't have to work with other pieces of gear, in terms of the clocking and the proximity and the electricity and all that. But I did some tests and I could hear differences, even though it's the same algorithm. In the L2, it's technically the same algorithm, but I feel it sounded different than the plug-in. And like I said, that might have to do also with the configuration of other gear involved.
Why did you like the L2 so much you bought more? What's so good about it, the hardware?
Well, the reason I bought more was not because I liked it. It's just because what happened is a while back I was doing surround work, and in surround you have to have multiple units of the same unit. So I bought it for that originally. Today's surround work is not as much as as a lot would assume it would go to. So it's a backup unit, and I have another studio. So.
And when you go to sell this L2, how much you gonna sell it for?
Well, I'm not selling right now because I use parts in case I need. But to be honest with you, if you get great results with a plug-in L2, it doesn't mean it's going to sound to you better in a hardware L2, because hardware is always part of a whole system, and it's how one piece of gear reacts with the other, and how they connect, and the power that drives everything, and the clocking that drives everything, and the cabling. So, just because you love an L2 plugin doesn't mean you're going to love an L2 box, and the opposite as well.
Right.
So I have them, but I also, some gear would sound different even if it's the same. Sure. Plus, another thing I didn't mention is I have my L2s modified. Some of them are modified.
In what way?
I had them modified in terms of clocking.
Okay.
So, but not all the units I have. Only some of them are modified.
And Harold is asking, what's your favorite aspects of the Max BCL?
Well, you know, you can use it to enhance the bass, which is, you know, one of the big features of it, because it took it from the Max Bass unit. There used to be a hardware unit called the Max Bass, and then there's a plugin, of course. It also has a Renaissance compressor, and it has a limiter which is close to the L2, but it's a bit different. I think it has a tone. It's a different tone than the L2, and I use it for that. I've done albums where that was the limiter to get the level, and I've done albums that it was part of the sound. I use it in analog or in digital, you know, because analog, it has, you know, both L2 and Max BCL have converters inside them from analog to digital. And the Max BCL also has transformers in them, and you know, it's a heavier piece. I've done some albums that I actually used, you know, the low end part of it, you know, to push the bass out of it. I've had albums that I actually used, you know, as clean as possible with it.
Okay. All right, you guys. Maor, thank you, bro.
You're welcome. I hope. Oh, there's somebody throwing a quick one. Okay.
Uh-oh, here we go.
Okay, that's it. It's real quick. You can make it as short as you want. TT, you know, are you using a standard type patch bay, or do you have something really special that you've got set up for yourself?
My setup is I have two routing systems here, one analog, one digital.
Okay.
The analog routing system is this. It's a backbone, mainly backbone, which has different chains that I built already connected to it. So when I change it, I change different chains. Some things I actually pull out the cable and put in. So so I don't have a patch bay for that, because most of it is going to that on the analog side. On the digital side, I have a mainframe that runs the digital signals, and I can change if I need.
Excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's it. It was very nice meeting you today.
Nice meeting you guys, and you're welcome to check out the website, Appelbaum.com, www.maorappelbaum.com. I repeat, www.maorappelbaum.com. And I'm on Facebook. I have a few Facebook accounts, so I can add you on one of them, but the others are maxed. So, and if I don't, it's because they're maxed out.
Got it.
Anyway, it was great hanging with you guys, and we'll do one probably sooner or later, another one with more questions.
Very good.
Right,
Thank you.
Enjoy your session. Time for me to go in here. I hear somebody. It sounds like a dude singing like a female. So I'm about to go see who this guy is, because there's only guys. And it sounds like a female's in there singing, so I'm about to go.
That creates interest, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right, guys. Y'all have a nice day. Everybody watching. See you later. Thank you, Maor.
You're welcome.
All right, bro.